some loud typing.
Yeah, sorry. I should fix that.
It's a debate tactic.
Yeah, I'm gonna use my cleavage and my loud typing to win. Sorry, guys.
True.
Never works.
I think that's also the strategy Vaush uses in most of his debates.
Yep.
Hey, he's lost a lot of weight. That's mean, okay?
I don't think he was going to know.
Fucked up. Is that actually better, or is it still really loud?
I don't hear it at all.
I can't hear anything. Are you typing right now?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, that's
If you type and talk at the same time, it will pick it up. I think that's it.
Okay.
We've got 1 minute till show time. Thank you very much, everyone, for responding to me. I'm nobody. Thank you. And have a good night, everyone. Yeah, enjoy. Cam, good to have you back. TJump, we haven't seen you for like 4 months. Good to have you. And thanks again, everyone. See you soon.
Thank you, dude.
DM me if anybody needs anything, okay?
Hey guys in the chat, how's it going? Nobody on the stream can hear me because I'm muted, so only you guys can hear me. What is up? At least I hope you can hear me and the audio's not busted or something. That would suck. Yeah, my voice is showing up. Audio should be showing up too. What is up with you guys?
Hello, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. I hope you're having a wonderful afternoon, and I would like to thank you all for choosing to spend your Friday with Hippy Dippy Incorporated. The movers and shakers, all thank you. Now, I want to thank you all for coming to this edition specifically because we've been doing this almost 2 years now, and this is actually the 50th episode of the Hippy Dippy Roundtable and the first of the new year after taking a hiatus, and we're going to be implementing a lot of new stuff into the new year to try to make the show more energizing and more interactive, and I just want to thank you all for starting the new year with a bang. I also want to say that today, a personal interview of mine on Jesse Lee Peterson's show, The Fallen State, was released, and I would tell everybody they should go check it out. It was a very interesting, and I would even say amazing interview, to say the least. And so now, before we get into the rules, I'm going to have everybody give a short introduction. Try to keep it timely, of course. We're going to start in the top left-hand corner with the conservative TikTok star, Cam Higbee.
Hi, I'm Cam. I post on TikTok. I, of course, talk about political issues, just like I'm sure everybody else in here does. I'm a conservative, and I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Wonderful. Next is going to be, sadly, the League streamer, Stephen Bunnell.
Hey guys, what's up? You probably know me better online as Yorha Space Destiny. I'm an 80 carry main bot lane. I'll be going for Grand Masters this season. Okay, so make sure you watch my streams. I will definitely be getting to Grand Masters, and yeah, it's gonna be a great ride there.
It sure will. Now we're gonna throw it over to Hake.
Hey guys, I'm James Hake. I host the Hake Report Monday through Friday, 9 to 11 Pacific time. I'm an expert and I read Hake News over on the Jesse Lee Peterson show, which is a morning show. I'm on his network. And I produce Church with Jesse Lee Peterson at his nonprofit organization, Bond. And I'm happy to be on Hippy Dippy once again.
Happy to have you back, Hake. And hopefully I can come on your program next week.
Yes, that would be fun.
Throwing it now over to I Am Really Important.
Awesome, Dylan. Thanks for having me. I go by I'm Really Important. I follow electoral politics. We keep a close eye on the House and the Senate. And I'm excited to be here. Should be a lot of fun.
Wonderful. And thank you for making the last minute replacement. Our surprise guest sadly couldn't make it due to personal troubles. And so IRI, of course, is the best surprise we could have wished for.
Wait, who was the surprise guest?
I can't tell you. It's a surprise.
Well, but they couldn't make it, so.
Well, now it'll be a surprise for another day.
I know who they were, and they lied about the personal issues. I just didn't want to be on your shit-ass fucking show.
Yeah, I'm sure, Destiny. But you came here because you're a shit-ass fucking streamer. Now I'm going to throw over to Lecture Fan.
Hey, what's up? I'm Lecture Fan. I'm a conservative. I've been streaming politics on Twitch since 2015. I'm an attorney in the day. I stream at night every evening, except Thursday nights. Thursday night's family night. And then I do gaming on the weekends. So stoked for 2022. Can't wait for the Republicans to take back Congress and put an end to the Biden administration. Let's go. Thanks for having me, Dylan.
Happy to have you here, Lecture Fan. Now I'm going to throw it over to Merrick.
Hey, I'm Merrick DeVille. I am a leftist, allegedly a YouTuber and a streamer. That's very rare nowadays. I cover like sex work, feminism, drug issues, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Happy to have you here, Merrick. Now we're going to throw it over to a Hippy Dippy Recruitment Show alum of our developmental brand, The Paradigm Shift. How you going? How's it doing, man? You are muted.
I am muted. I did the streamer thing. Yay, my first time, and I did the streamer thing. I am the Paradigm Shift. I am a leftist. I just believe that values belong to the people, and I try to discuss that as much as I can on my show every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, or whenever my depression does not kick in. And I'm happy to be here.
Happy to have you here. Now we're going to throw it over to TJump.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me on. I'm TJump. I do debates with professors and philosophers on reasons to believe in a God, pretty much, and occasionally talk to political topics. Thanks for having me on.
Happy to have you on, and I'm finally happy I'm getting your name correct. Okay, so let's go into some of the rules of the program. The first rule, of course, is that when I'm talking, no one else is talking. I am not talking to make political points. I will merely be talking in order to moderate. And so I would ask you, if you cannot hear me right now, to turn up my volume up in Discord, and try to recognize my voice among everyone else, because I will mute you if you continue to talk while I am talking, while I attempt to moderate. The next rule is we will not be breaking any Twitch terms of service. Many of us are streaming on the Twitch platform, and they have some stricter terms of service, for instance, than YouTube does. And I would ask you to do your best to follow those terms of service. I would also ask you not to make attacks on people's inalienable characteristics. That includes things like gender and race. We're not going to be doing those types of attacks. You can go ham on their ideas, okay? You can insult people's intelligence. But I would also say that, I will say, though, that honey gets more flies than vinegar. Now, I will also say that when it comes to the show, pronouns, we do respect them. If you don't want to do that on your own time, that's your business. But here we do. Does
that include neopronouns?
Yes, Destiny. Yes, Destiny, that does.
Hey, quick follow-up questions. Can we refuse to say pronouns if we just use the person's name instead?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Are we respecting neo names?
Of course, Destiny. Okay.
I should just interrupt. Dylan, can I even wear this on Twitch? Is this okay?
It's fine. Just don't.
Yes,
figure out too much.
I promise you it's okay. I promise you.
Okay, alright.
Put it like a hot tub in the background, and you're a-okay. You can wear anything on this site. All right.
Wonderful. Okay. God, I don't understand neopronouns. I need to figure out what the fuck any of that is. Anyway, so let's move on. Is there any rules that I forgot? I don't believe so. Is there anything that needs to be discussed, any rule you don't understand, or anything you need me to clarify?
Yeah, what do we do if you say to stop talking?
Stop talking.
Oh, okay.
Wonderful. Okay, so now we're going to go into the first topic. And it is a topic that, of course, it is the anniversary of 1 year ago and 1 day. January 6th occurred, which was an event that happened at the Capitol. I won't put any moral statement upon it, even though I think everybody knows what I think of the day as a personal witness to it. I want to ask you all, how do you think January 6th should be remembered? And what do you think its impact on history will be? We're going to start in the top left-hand corner with Cam Higby.
Yeah, sure. So, I don't condone the January 6th attack, right? I think it's it obviously bad, right? People got hurt. They broke into the Capitol. It was wrong and bad, but I don't think that it ranks up there with Pearl Harbor and 9/11 like certain politicians might allude to. And I mean, I guess a lot of my argumentation will kind of revolve around some of the misinformation that's floating around about this event that might come up in this stream, or maybe it won't. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, I obviously think it's bad. So we just move on to the next person.
Wonderful. Now I'm going to throw it over to Destiny.
Yeah, definitely bad. I'd rank it somewhere between Nagasaki and Hiroshima in terms of badness. Maybe not quite up to Pearl Harbor, but it's definitely up there. You know, big bad event. Yeah, that's all I got. We'll see where we go on the panel of this. Obviously, it's bad. Some people are exaggerating it, but there's like weird lies being told on both sides about it. But I guess we'll see what we get into on the panel.
Okay. Next, I'm going to throw it to the Hake Report.
I think that we should remember the truth about it, and hopefully its impact on history will be that some of the blatant lies will diminish people's blind trust in the establishment and both the mainstream media, the phony politicians who are melodramatic about it, pretending to care about Officer Sicknick. And we take a good hard look at ourselves and the way that people want to just hate one another based on hype.
Okay. Next, we're going to throw it over to IRI.
Yeah, I think Ted Cruz said it pretty well when he called it a terrorist attack. Republican senator from Texas. I would agree with him. It was a terrorist attack. I think that it was our fellow Americans misled by a guy who couldn't accept his defeat. I thought it was unpatriotic. It was also really amazing to see police officers fight in hand-to-hand combat for hours against a mob and protect our temple of democracy. I mean, in the words of Joe Biden, you can't love your country only when you win. So let's see what other people have to say.
Wonderful. Lecture
Great
fan.
American hero, Joe Biden.
All right, first, it wasn't a terrorist attack. We don't have a democracy. January 6th is being blown totally out of proportion for partisan reasons. When you're talking about January 6th, you got to differentiate. What are you talking about? Are you talking about the senators and representatives that validly and legally objected to counting electoral college votes because states had unconstitutional election procedures? Are you talking about people that were there that did not go into the Capitol, did commit any crimes, that were not violent, that were legitimately peaceful protesters? Are you talking about the sort of the rogue elements of the group that actually did commit violence? Are you talking about people that literally walked into the Capitol, didn't even know what they were doing? It shouldn't even be a topic. I mean, it's so irrelevant to society. We shouldn't even be talking about it. This is important as, you know, any local crime story. It's not that big. Here's the reality. The reality is the Democrats are bringing this up and spending all this time on it and doing this huge electoral commission because they can't get anything done in Congress and they can't get anything passed. And so this is a huge distraction element. The real purpose is to try to paint all Trump supporters as terrorists. It's disgusting. And then to use domestic spy operations on Trump supporters. I mean, there's so many just bad parts about this. It shouldn't even be a discussion. It's turned into a total partisan hit job. And it's just so bad. The whole discussion about it. We should be talking about BLM and Antifa instead.
Okay, we're going to throw it over to Merrick.
Crazy. Okay. So I think it's very obviously, very apparently an act of insurrectionary terrorism. It's kind of indisputable, actually. I do think that Kamala Harris saying that it's like, oh my god, if Pearl Harbor happened to 9/11 during World War II or whatever is like pretty fucking goofy. Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. I'm trying not to curse. It's pretty goofy. But at the same time, I think we also have to take this seriously and understand that just because they abjectly and very embarrassingly failed at whatever it is that their goal was, doesn't mean that we have to act like it's a big nothing burger. We can actually take this seriously without completely over-exaggerating it. So, completely disagree with everything Lecture Fan just said.
Got you. Now I'm going to throw it over to the paradigm shift.
January 6th bad. Benghazi. Like I could throw out a bunch of buzzwords here, and I feel like when we talk about January 6th, like I always say, I can empathize with people who were there. I get like, without saying, oh, they were just dumb or stupid, you know, whatever. They, in their heads, had valid reasons that they thought they were fighting against. And in the reality of the world, everybody feels like they have a valid reason for whatever it is they do. And that's fine, that's sure, that's great, whatever. But like, not only was January 6th a mess, not only could it have been worse, but the response that we're getting right now, even having this conversation, is more like people are overblowing it to make it seem like the government's trying to throw it because they can't do much here and this and that. It's like there were a big crowd of people who were met with barely any resistance, and God forbid they got their hands on anybody. I know how many times people are going to say I'm playing the id poll card here, but when it comes to January 6th for me, I'm just saying if it was a group of people who identified as Black Lives Matter, it would have been a slaughter. Like at this point in time, we can't even begin to like understand all the little nuances of why the defense on the Capitol wasn't like put up more and every week. There's so many unanswered questions that I just have to say, January 6th bad. How should it be remembered? As a moment where people were fueled to believe something through these crazy conspiracy theories. Yes, crazy conspiracy theories. And it's just like, why? Why? What is your end goal? What is your point? What are you doing here? And no, January 6th bad. Simple as that. Bad, horrible, miserable.
TJump.
So my position is that the January 6th riots are essentially the same as all the BLM riots, like burning down a police station and raiding a government organization to try to make political change without voting for it is pretty much the same. I mean, the only difference is the location. One is a federal government building versus one is a state building. I don't see this as any more of a way to try to overthrow the government than making no-go zones for where police can't go, or trying to usurp the government by destroying police stations. I don't see any significant difference here. And so I can't really say why this would be any worse or any worth more condemning than any of the other BLM protests that caused significant damage, like the ones here in Minneapolis. So I don't really know what the big deal is, and it's why there's such a huge double standard, and that Republicans condemn all the BLMs but not this one, and then the Democrats condemn this one but not all the BLM ones, or to a much different degree than one another. It seems pretty obvious these are about the same in magnitude, except like very few people died in both cases, lots of property damage in both cases, both trying to subvert political authority. I don't really see any significant difference here. Definitely not comparable to any of the tragedies where tens of thousands of people died, but on a scale of magnitude, they're just riots. That's about it.
Way more damage in the BLM Antifa riots.
Okay. The floor is now open for general discussion. You have about.
I have a question. I have a question for leftists. How many people have been charged with insurrection, and how many people have been charged with terrorism?
Wait, is there a
47?
Yeah.
40,
yes,
40,
terrorism is a federal criminal charge.
47 for insurrection, and I think like nobody for terrorism.
Well, it's an ongoing investigation. Lecture, you know this.
Yeah, but they literally have people in jail and they haven't even been convicted of anything, and they're being held in 23-hour-a-day solitary confinement, which is like jarring enough to even make Elizabeth Warren speak up.
And welcome to America's prison system. Glad you guys are finally giving it.
I don't think anyone here is going to advocate for putting people in solitary confinement for 23 hours a day. That's literally torture. I don't think you're going to get any of us sitting here going, wow, that's so awesome. Like, we don't want that. But at the same time, what we're saying...
You won't say anything about it.
Yeah,
the reason why
not one of you leftists said that.
We literally just said that's bad.
The
What are you
really,
talking-
I want to comment on something Paradigm said earlier. He said that if it was BLM, if it was anybody who identified as a member of BLM, it would have been a slaughter. So do you have like any citation for that or any evidence that would be the case at all? Because we went through months and months. Wait, we went through months and months.
Dylan's talking.
Stop.
Sorry.
Okay, I don't need backup moderation though.
Sorry.
Okay. Merrick, the question was directed to Paradigm Shift, so I want Paradigm Shift to be able to respond. Paradigm?
Okay, so you say, do I have any evidence or citations that would have happened? Well, obviously that event didn't happen. But if we look at the protest for BLM that happened in Brooklyn that I was at,
slaughters.
It could have been. It was very close to. The only reason why
they weren't.
I was there. Like, we were beat up. We were assaulted. We were literally, like, the police themselves had to stop them, the other police, from, like, attacking them. And I have that on video. You can hear police officers yelling, like, nah, that's too much. That's too much.
This is
like,
a general question. I'm not sure of the answer to this, but did anybody die at any BLM riot? Like, any BLM protesters die
Lots
at
of
riots?
people. Way more.
Yes.
Yeah, way more.
No.
So in
I'm not
Austin-
talking about people killed by BLM. I'm talking about BLM protesters.
Yes,
Okay,
I can answer your question. So in my city in Austin, there was a pregnant woman who was hit in the stomach with a beanbag gun by an officer. Her baby died. There was also a young man who was on I-35, one of the days that I was there, who was shot with some sort of non-lethal agent. He was shot in the head, and I watched them drag his body off of I-35, and then he died. So yes, cops have absolutely killed people.
I'm glad. I'm glad we
Five
agree.
Trump
Babies are
supporters
people
died.
now.
5 Trump supporters died that day.
Yeah, one of them was crushed by other Trump supporters.
No, that's not true. It was an
That is
OD.
absolutely
I'll say this. There was 5 Trump supporters that died, but like, so Ashley, or I think it was actually 4, and Ashley Babbitt was obviously shot and killed by the Capitol Police. There was 1 heart attack prior to the storming of the Capitol. There was a stroke prior to the storming of the Capitol, and there was an OD just as it happened.
Merrick,
So-
I'm getting echo from your end.
Like, yeah, the only person that died that day was literally a Trump supporter that was shot and killed by the police. And there hasn't been any BLM riots that have been a slaughter. And there's been a hell of a lot more BLM riots than there has been riots driven by Trump supporters.
Right.
And
Like
why do you
billions
think
and
that
billions
is?
of dollars.
And the
This is so
BLM
goofy.
riots
Like
aren't
a
based
million.
on anything real. The Trump supporters actually
I
had.
would love. Hold on, wait. I'm gonna save you the effort because I know it's my first time here and I'm the newbie guy. I'm gonna save you the effort right now. Don't do that. Don't
The
don't
Trump
say that, 'cause
supporters
it's
have a
like,
legitimate complaint. The Black Lives Matter do not.
Do you like my first stream ever was complaining about a cop pulling a gun on me and firing a bullet like 3 inches away from my head for literally finding like what? I think that if we're gonna go deeper into that, I think that's gonna be a division between like what you see in your neighborhood and how you grew up versus how I grew up. I promise
Yeah.
you, BLM has a legitimate complaint. Don't do that. Don't do
No,
that.
you
to
can
yourself.
look at actual
I
data.
think
You
they're
can
both
actually look at
illegitimate,
data.
but we should
Stop,
probably
stop,
just
stop,
stick
stop,
to the
stop,
topic.
Stop. Okay, so I want to make sure like we don't all talk at the same time. I almost forgot. I forgot to say at the start. That's what I forgot. If you raise your hand, I will write your name down. If you find it difficult to get into the conversation due to the panel format, it can get kind of hectic, and I'll make sure eventually we get over to you. I just wanted to make sure to say that. So I'll write your name down. TJump. Okay.
What?
All right.
sorry,
You
Dylan.
say something? You haven't said.
Yeah, I'll say,
anything.
what is the BLM riots or protests have anything to do? We're talking about January 6th here, guys. Let's stay let's stay focused here, okay? Let's talk about the January 6th event.
well, the
We
double
can point
standard
out all the
is
riots over the
revealing.
course of America's history if you want. I mean, what's the point? Let's talk about January 6th.
That got brought up
Hypocrisy.
because Paradigm brought it up. That's why I questioned him, because he said, and I quote, if there was anybody there identifying with BLM, it would have been, quote, a slaughter. That's why it got brought up. Not because of any of us, lecture fan, or any conservative brought it up, but because Paradigm brought it up, and I questioned him.
It's a legitimate thing because there's a double standard. The Black Lives Matter protesters are endlessly given room to destroy, whereas the Trump supporters do one thing. Out of so many protests, one turned violent, and we don't even know really who's all behind it. So it's a clear double standard.
Yeah,
So-
the point
And
is
the
the
outrage
BLM
is the-
Antifa ones were way worse. We're actually way worse in terms of number of deaths, in terms of number of people killed, in terms of property damage, in terms of all these things. So you have literally like dozens and dozens and dozens of these extreme, severe, hardcore riots where people are killed and buildings are burned down. Literally, federal courthouse is under siege for an entire summer. Federal courthouse is under siege for not a word from the leftists. And then there's one, and then you have hundreds and hundreds of Trump rallies and hundreds of Trump protests, and not a single one ever. There's not a single crime committed, not a single thing wrong. I mean, they clean up after themselves in the park, and then we're gonna have this huge, oh my gosh, January 6th is like 9/11. It's obviously a partisan BS.
Okay. So there's two things.
Hypocrisy.
Two things happening right now.
But the first thing is I'm talking. So we're gonna go IRI, TJump, then Merrick. We're gonna go in that order and write your name down, Cam.
How does any of that lecture fan compare to interfering with the peaceful transition of power in America? We're supposed to lead by example here. What are you talking about? The federal court was stopped from doing nothing in the middle of the night because some people threw a stupid little bottle full of nothing at it? Who cares? Fireworks at it and shot at some people guarding the courthouse at night? Who cares? You're talking about the peaceful transfer of power in America. Are you kidding me? You're comparing the two?
There was no interference with the peaceful transfer of power. Do you realize that those people
didn't evacuate the building with the nuclear football, right? That didn't happen.
Not for a lack of trying.
What Trump wanted, and what a lot of the January 6th protesters wanted, was for senators and House of Representatives members to object to the Electoral College certification and establish a committee, to look into the facts.
When the protesters broke in.
There was no
They were in the middle of
interference.
Is that why they brought a noose?
Senator Lankford was interrupted while they were doing that. So they interrupted the debate.
Okay, Destiny, you wanted to say something quick before
Yeah,
we move
sure.
on?
I'm not going to comment too much on opinions, but just to make things relatively fact-based, right? They were already in the middle of that objection process. That's not what people wanted. People wanted a singular actor to overturn the democratic process.
One or two people, a couple of
people. No. The call was for Trump.
two.
The call was from Trump on Twitter, specifically referencing some obscure idea that Pence could single-handedly overturn the democratic process. That's what people were looking for, not what was already happening, not the process that not only was already happening, but nobody had any reason to believe would stop, which was them going through their objections, which they did. They had the right to do so, and they did it. So that is just absolutely not true. Just making sure that's on the record.
Okay, I gotta throw this over to TJump quick. Lecture fan, did you want to respond to that? Want me to write your name down?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, like TJump.
Yeah, so I'm still not hearing like any comparison here. Like, what is
Also, your reverb is like out, like through the roof right now.
Me? Yeah. My reverb, Dylan.
Okay, sounds better.
Okay, so I'm still not seeing the difference here between the January 6th riot and any other BLM riots. It seems like, again, they're all still trying to overthrow the government. Like the BLM riots destroyed a police station. They tried to take over parts of like areas of streets and blocks to block out police so they couldn't enforce it. They were literally trying to take locations from America, and which is subverting and overthrowing the government. So I don't see the difference here between the two. Like, obviously, both are bad. You shouldn't try to overthrow the government. But how is this, the January 6th riot, significantly different from what the BLM did, other than its location?
I don't see how the January 6thers wanted to overthrow the government. They wanted to preserve it from being overthrown.
Both could make that argument. So that's just perspective.
Merrick,
All right.
You're next.
So
But there was no evidence they wanted to overthrow the government.
So there's a couple things
just a
happening
claim.
here.
That's
There's
projection.
a couple. Okay,
It's
so
very
there's a couple things that are happening here. The first is that you guys are acting like an entire group of people being very upset that their communities are currently and historically over-policed and brutalized by our
Not true.
police and military forces. I'm talking. It's not your time to talk. Thank you. So there's a big difference between entire communities who have been historically disenfranchised and abused by this country being upset and lashing out, and those, was it 7% of BLM protests being violent, and people thinking that their president is directing them.
Your mic is unplugged?
We
I
can
know,
hear you. We
good.
keep going. Yes. we
Okay,
can hear
there's
you.
so much footage of people walking in saying, "Stop the steal, looking at the cops, calling them oath breakers. They're walking out of the building when everything is said and done with their arms raised going, "We did it. We stopped the election from being certified." They're chanting, "Hang Mike Pence." There's footage of all of this. You can deny it and say that it didn't happen, but it's on camera. It's literally recorded. These people planned this ahead of time. This wasn't like we're frustrated with the fact that we are oppressed. It was that we have been brainwashed by our idiot president into thinking that this election is fake when it's clearly not. There's literally no reason for you to need to compare this to BLM. The only reason you're doing it is to deflect from the actual events of January 6th, which is what we came here to talk about, not BLM.
All right, can I get my response into what Destiny said earlier?
Sure.
Okay.
but
It's
then
not
we have-
melodramatic. You're mad because I told you not to talk over me, and you probably don't like women speaking to you this way. It's not melodramatic. It's that I'm using a firm tone of voice with you, and you're not going to speak to me that way. Do you understand?
Okay, lady. All right, lady.
Yeah, that's what I
Okay,
thought.
All right,
Lecture
so-
fan, and then it's gonna be Cam after.
Yeah, so Destiny and IRI are completely wrong. What Trump wanted with what Mike Pence did was actually a relative, admittedly obscure constitutional legal theory that, without commenting on the merits of it, called for the vice president to reject one of the state's electors on the basis that there was questions about the legality of it and the constitutionality of those electors, which then would have caused there to be no you wouldn't count those electors, and then if there was enough of them to make it so that nobody got to 270, then that would send the election into the House, and then the House or Congress under the Constitution. So the idea that this was trying to overthrow the Constitution or violently interfere with, no, like, you can disagree with that constitutional legal theory all you want, but there was nothing sort of violent or illegal about it. That was the theory. Mike Pence could reject it. They wouldn't reach 270, and then it goes into the House. That's what the Constitution says. That's what the legal theory was. There wasn't any violent or overthrowing or insurrection or anything about it.
So the word I use is undemocratic. We have a process by which we elect a president. The idea of trying to appeal to the vice president, I don't even know if you're making a real argument if this is like a character. The idea of appealing to the vice president to overthrow the results of the election is obviously undemocratic.
How is it undemocratic to allow to follow the Constitution and allow
Because
Congress
regardless
to
of what
decide?
obscure provision is in the Constitution that might allow for this, which I don't think legal scholars were even unified in believing that was something that they agreed could be done, right? Despite that, obviously there would have been a sort of constitutional crisis, right? Like, I think technically the executive can get away with not enforcing any laws that come from the legislative, but that doesn't mean it's a good idea that it's not democratic, right? You know this if
So
you've been to
the-
law
the
school. Hold on,
Constitution's not
wait, hold on. The Constitution's not democratic, okay? But when you
That's
do
what I
legal
just said.
shit, when you do law, right, okay, there is a lot that's built on case law. There's a lot that's built on kind of the gentleman agreements that we have in terms of how we operate society. Just because something's on the books doesn't necessarily mean that it would even survive being tested in court, and it sure as fuck doesn't make it democratic. You know this as well as
Okay,
I'm
all right,
sure
let
you
me-
know this,
all right.
yes?
Okay, let me get a response into that, because doesn't matter if it's undemocratic. Guess what? Democracy sucks. Our founding fathers and our Constitution are specifically designed to be undemocratic. That's why we have a Senate. That's why we have a constitutional republic. We have a constitution. We don't have a democracy. So this idea that following the Constitution is undemocratic, yeah, it is, because democracy sucks. Democracy is purposefully what we're not supposed to have.
Okay,
It's
then I
called
agree.
a
Okay.
constitutional
What the-
republic.
I agree that. If you
Pure
want to say that
democracy
Trump was
sucks.
acting
Study
in a
America's
totalitarian,
founding. Study
if you
the
want to say he was acting
Constitution.
in a totalitarian manner and he was being undemocratic,
Yeah.
fine, I'll agree with you. That's fine. Okay, I can agree
No,
with that.
Trump was fighting for the
Autocratic
people, though.
lecture fan.
No,
Okay,
it's
okay.
called
Failure here.
Yeah, wait.
constitutional republicanism. It's
There's-
called constitutional republicanism. You guys don't
wait.
obviously know anything about the
First of all-
Constitution or about
Let's slow
America's
down, let's slow
founding,
down.
because
Let's
pure
slow- let's
democracy
go.
is
Let's
not
go.
what we're supposed to.
Okay, Cam, it is your turn.
That was
All
undemocratic.
right. So the reason
that
that people keep wanting to compare the January 6th riot to the BLM riots is because the BLM riots were objectively worse. Okay. They killed dozens of people, 25 people, if I remember correctly, $2 billion in property damage. People lost their jobs. They lost their businesses. They weren't able to put food on the plates for their family. Their businesses went permanently bankrupt. They were objectively worse. And you keep saying this, like, 7% of of BLM riots were peaceful. Okay, 7% of flights flown on 9/11 were completely indestructive. That's a ridiculous stat, and it doesn't make any sense when you look at the raw damage inflicted by these riots. It is ridiculous. And the reason that people are infuriated by this is because there is no BLM Summer of 2020 Riot Select Committee, but there is a January 6th Select Committee. There is an in-depth FBI investigations that you're hearing about every day into these riots. Sure, there were lots of arrests, and there were some FBI investigations. We saw this with the Rittenhouse thing. There was an FBI plane, whatever. There was stuff going on, but they're not looking into it as deeply as they are this. And the other thing, we keep acting like this is some kind of coordinated, organized insurrection to overthrow the U.S. government. It's not true. It's bullshit. It's bogus. Okay. The FBI's investigation literally found that there was scant evidence that this attack was coordinated in any way. They also found scant evidence that Trump was involved.
Yep, correct.
Oh, please let me go.
And I'll write down Merrick.
Dude, you know the investigation is still going, right? You're aware that this is the largest investigation by the FBI ever, and you're claiming that it's all resolved. Are you done?
Stop.
I'm not done yet, young genius.
We're going to let IRI finish, and I'm also going to write down Hake's name. Okay.
Listen, I'm going to teach you something today, okay? I don't know what they're teaching over there on TikTok, but I'm going to give you a little education lesson here, okay? First of all, I can't even imagine what they would have done if they had a couple of months to do damage like the BLM event took place. You're talking about what happened in a couple of hours compared to what happened over a couple of months. Do you see the disconnect there? Now let me move over to Lecture Fan over here to my side. Lecture Fan, I think you're talking about the Electoral Count Act, which just has the VP as simply a guy opening envelopes and announcing what happened. Even your own Republican senators disagree with you because they're now revisiting that, saying maybe we could make some changes to clarify what's going on there. Even Mike Pence disagrees with you. So what is this legal theory you're talking about that nobody seems to agree with you except that creepy dude, Alan Dershowitz, whatever.
So you're admitting that it's ambiguous enough that they're considering clarifying it. And I don't know if you know this, but you can have
a lot of things need clarification.
You can have ambiguous laws that are subject to more than one interpretation. That's literally the definition of ambiguity under law, is that it's subject to more than one interpretation.
I'd really like to respond to
I don't disagree with you that like a lot of people disagree with it, and that's why I said like I'm not even commenting on the merits about it. I'm literally not even commenting or saying I agree with that legal theory or not. In fact, I probably don't. So I'm not. But the point is that it's not some overthrow, violent, undemocratic, or anti-constitutional thing. Sure, it's undemocratic, but the U.S. Senate's undemocratic. The Electoral College is undemocratic. That's on purpose.
Okay,
can I respond?
Yeah,
real quick.
We're gonna, Cam. Since
so you just said that it's the largest scale investigation currently going on, and that it's still going on, so that my point was invalid. But you'd think that if this was the largest scale FBI investigation going on in the country, with all of the resources they have, that they'd be able to pull something together within a year from the time that it happened. But apparently they haven't been able to do that. And I love how you're trying to taint the well by, I don't know what they teach you on TikTok. That's hilarious, bro. You also said that you couldn't imagine what they could have done over months. Well, they could have done more over months. Like, what was stopping them, other than them saying that they weren't going to, or that Trump supporter, like, what? I don't know what you mean. Do you think that it was the same group of BLM people at every single riot that resulted in 7-story buildings going up in flames? Ridiculous.
Oh, okay. We're gonna throw it over to Paradigm Shift, Merrick, Hake, then TJump in that order. Well, did you have something to say on that specifically, Hake?
I wanted to talk about the basis for the protests.
Okay.
And the notion of democratic.
Could you wait a little bit after?
Yes.
Okay, Paradigm.
Okay, so I've heard a lot. I'm gonna try to respond to everything. I'm gonna say this to start it, and hopefully this rings out true to you, because I know at this point, from what I'm hearing, I'm not changing nobody's minds. I'm not shifting nobody's paradigms. There's a lot. Okay, I understand January 6th from a Trump supporter's mind. I've talked to many Trump supporters, many close to my friends that used to be my friends who went there that day. The goal that I have gathered from everyone I've talked to seems to be all over the place. When we talk about, and since it keeps getting brought up, I'm just going to be the arbiter for that group. When we talk about BLM, and we talk about the months and months of damage and the politicians who egged it on, this and that and whatever, we end up in a scope where we have to ask ourselves, what is the main goal? And Merrick already said this, I'm sorry for repeating you, but when you talk about systemic injustice and there being no answer to it other than like, hey, if you're not going to be kind to us and police us in a way that makes us feel safe in our communities, we're going to violently lash out against you, since that seems to be the only language you understand, you end up at a point like the summer of 2020. When you go to January 6th, which is the point of what we're supposed to be talking about here, and we talk about the main goal of these people who showed up there to do what, per se, you end up with a bunch of fallacies that don't allow them to have jurisdiction to be there. And when we talk about, well, what about the response? What about this? What about that? They got away with it. The fact that it's an ongoing investigation that they can't seem to find answers on says a lot about Operation Legend and how they were able to rat down 1,500 people and put them in jail. Oh, but the politicians were releasing bail funds for them and everything. 1,500 people went to jail over this. Barely over 60 went to jail over the insurrection. Does that mean that the insurrection is less worse? Like, it's confusing to me that we're trying to either think about it as not that big a deal when the end goal of January 6th was, no matter who, I don't know how you could have watched that day and not seen this, but the end goal for them was stop the steal. Like, whatever disenfranchised votes they felt like, whatever they thought the election process was corrupt, whatever, they simply wanted the election to stop. And I don't know where in the world, like, unless you're just terminally online and you don't think it had any real world ramifications, like, do you not see these people egging on consistently? We want Donald Trump to remain the president. Like, at that point, how are we comparing things? The reason why January 6th sucks so bad is because, God forbid, they got their hands on somebody. God forbid it was a senator who got hurt. God forbid it was somebody who was bigger in this league and got hurt. The fact that it didn't happen doesn't mean that we just brush it off. It means, whoa, why did that happen? Why are we not analyzing that? Which is the investigation, which is the point everyone's been making.
Okay. Merrick, then Hake, and then TJump. Then I wrote down Cam's name. Merrick, you are muted.
Oh, sorry, I forgot I muted myself. So I think it's a little reductive and a little silly to say that just because this wasn't organized by one person and everyone wasn't completely coordinated, to brush off the idea of organization altogether, when we know that the Proud Boys were organized beforehand, we know the Oath Keepers were there organized beforehand, we know the 3%ers were. Bellingcat wrote an article the day before it went down. Let's see, the Washington Post wrote an article warning about all the people that were planning and organizing. NBC wrote an article and published it about people who were planning and organizing, showing receipts, showing the things people were talking about. That's three major outlets that were telling people, this is what's going to happen. This is what these people are saying. So to be like, well, there wasn't one central hub of organization so then you can belittle the idea of organization, I think is like kind of slimy rhetoric, and it's not really very honest at all when we know that people were talking about this. Let me read you something. This one is actually really good. You can go to Washington on January 6th and help storm the Capitol. As many patriots as can be. We will storm the government buildings, kill cops, kill security guards, kill federal employees and agents, and demand a recount. Here's another one.
And who said that?
Says,
and where did it come from?
These are anonymous posters. This one came from 8kun.
Which is where, though, I'm asking?
8kun.
Like, where?
It's a website called 8kun. Okay, so this is one that a lot of Trump supporters and a lot of people use, a lot of very far right members use. Marjorie Taylor Greene actually used it.
Did these have timestamps?
This doesn't matter. These are from before January 6th.
Timestamps are not.
It absolutely does.
Wait.
It came before January 6th.
Can I ask a clarification? Do you mean ain't coon?
Is it supposed to be coon and not kun?
I forget the exact pronunciation of it, but okay.
I don't know. I don't hang out with people that go on this website. Yes, people have heard of it. Marjorie Taylor Greene used it. QAnon people use it. The far right uses it. Nazis use it. Pedophiles use it. Y'all's whole crowd is adjacent to people who use it regularly. So yes, a lot of people have
Never heard of
about
it.
this.
So
Never
you're
heard
citing
of it.
some obscure.
Okay, well then
site
maybe
in
you're not as
that
good.
don't
Maybe you shouldn't have the amount of
timestamps.
followers that you have on TikTok if you've never heard of this website, because this is connected to all kinds of QAnon and Patriot Prayer.
You're
and,
citing
you know,
some
three
obscure
percenters,
site,
like-
and you're not even like they don't even have timestamps. Somebody could have gone in and put these up
Okay,
afterwards.
if you could not start
no
with conspiracy theories before I'm even done making my point, that would be super
I think
great.
you're more on the borderline of
Super,
conspiracy
super great.
theorists than I.
These are
The
major
FBI's
outlets that are writing about these things.
the
So if you're trying
FBI's
to tell me
investigation
that
found
the
no coordination.
Washington Post and Bellingcat and NBC all got together and were in on some conspiracy theory, that's great, but that makes you look insane. So
No,
if you
fake
could let me
news.
finish
There's
my
a big
point,
difference between
that
people
would be
going
great.
there and actually storming the Capitol. You're
That
citing
would
some
be
obscure
really,
some
really
obscure
great
website.
if you could stop talking while it's my turn to talk, because you'll have your turn later. Is that okay? Jesus. There's all kinds of things like this.
You're
There's
directly
all-
addressing me.
I'm not directly addressing you. I addressed a point you made, but it's been echoed throughout other people. It's my turn to talk. It's not yours. This is really easy to understand. Okay? Cool. There's all kinds of comments like this. So for you to sit there and say that there's no organization is extraordinarily dishonest. That was my point. And now if you want to say that it's all fake and none of it was real and all of the news outlets coordinated against you, now you can make your whatever conspiracy point you want to say to dismiss it so that you don't have to deal with it.
I think you're really the one that's more on the borderline of conspiracy theory here. You're citing some obscure website, and the comments don't even have timestamps. You can't just say all of these things and then gaslight everybody else into thinking that they're crazy because you're not providing evidence.
These are coming from major news outlets.
It's my time. It's my. You're
Fake
interrupting me now.
news.
You directly addressed me while you were talking. You said maybe you shouldn't have all those followers on TikTok if you've never heard of this random website that I found online. So you did directly address me, and I responded to you. Sorry if that hurt your feelings. But like, also, you're citing like these Washington Post articles that are saying like the Proud Boys were going there. There's a big difference between people going there and people storming the Capitol, because there were 90% of the people that were there were completely peaceful. It was a very small faction of far right people that actually broke into the Capitol, and opportunist people that didn't know what they're doing, just walked in and walked around, right? So, like, the FBI, if you think you're better than the FBI, because the FBI's investigation found that there was no coordination, not that there wasn't coordination by one person or one group of people, that there was no coordination. That's what the FBI's investigation found. So if you think you have more intelligence than, and I don't mean intelligence like your IQ, I mean intelligence like information. If you think you have more information in front of you than the FBI, I'd love to see it.
These
Okay,
don't
so
contradict
give me a
each other,
second.
though.
Give me a second. Okay, so Merrick, we're gonna have Merrick respond, and then we're gonna have to go back to the list because we have a bunch of people who've been waiting. Hake, TJump, Cam, then Shift. We'll
I don't understand what point you think you're making, because what you just said doesn't contradict what I said at all. I said because there wasn't a central hub where everyone got together doesn't mean there wasn't organization. And the way you originally phrased your point was dismissive of the idea that there were people organizing.
The FBI found no evidence of coordination to break into the like a coordinated plan by anyone to break into the Capitol. And you're claiming that there was people online on some obscure website that has no timestamps of people saying that they were going to break in the building and claiming to break in the building, but
There's
there's no
other
evidence
websites.
there. It's not
Okay. Do you want me to
doors
send you
are
the
unlocked.
sources? Do you want me
The
to
doors
send
are
you
unlocked.
the links
we're
and the
gonna-
sources that'll show you all this stuff?
So
I can DM you.
Okay, you can all link the sources in the group DM. We're gonna go to the next person, which is Hake. Destiny, what are you resting your hand? Are you raising your hand?
Why the fuck would I rest my hand on top of my fucking head when I can rest my hand on my desk in front of me? Obviously, my fucking.
I never said you were intelligent. Okay, where's your name now? Okay, Hake.
Black Lives Matter was pandered to by the establishment, and the January 6th, the Trump types, they're getting less and less representation in the government. The establishment has failed to convince many people, most Republicans to this day, I think, most Republican voters to this day, that this election was free and fair. And I think it's honestly been that way since 2000 between Republicans and Democrats, each thinking that it was unfair, stolen, whatever. And it seems like it's only gotten worse over time as we've gotten more divided. The motivation for the riots, or the protests, which turned into a riot in part, was what many felt were election shenanigans. We had the virus hype that caused liberals to shut down businesses and open up the voting, the mail-in voting, so any idiot could vote, no matter whether they care about the country or not. Trump was saying that it could lead to voter fraud, Everybody says, no, that didn't happen. A lot of people are unconvinced that that didn't happen. So they pushed for dumb liberals to vote like I've never seen. The mainstream media and the social media establishment pushed and fought very hard against Trump from the time that he was running for office throughout the whole time. And they were campaigning against Trump. They've been campaigning for Black Lives Matter, or the Me Too movement against men. The subversives hoped that the endless reminders and making it all too convenient to quote unquote vote would help them topple Trump. And Trump insists to this day, I think, that he won by a lot. Whether the enemies of America were able to get all the useful idiots to vote against Trump, or whether they used other means and got away with it, we don't know. But that's the reason for the protests. It was a democratic motivation that those people were protesting. They weren't trying to overthrow democracy. They were trying to save democracy in their minds. And a lot of fair-minded people think that way, even to this day. But the people had suspicions about it. And January 6th was a setup. We know that DC is notoriously corrupt. They let Antifa and Black Lives Matter run wild and burn down the church, I think, across the street from the White House. They let Antifa and Black Lives Matter and others, feminists, invade the official spaces and assault cops. And the Democrats are saying, oh, don't be so mean to the protesters, cops. In Charlottesville, we had a setup during Trump's thing where the lawful, mostly peaceful, white Unite the Right protesters protested against the tearing down of Confederate American heroes. And they let the cops did not separate and keep order, separate the parties, Antifa, Black Lives Matter, mostly attacking the whites over there. It was a setup so that they could declare an unlawful assembly. I suspect that that's what happened here, where they did not have enough security. I think Trump wanted 10,000, at least in an offhand comment, wanted 10,000 National Guard troops to protect, to keep law and order. He's a law and order president. He doesn't want this. And so I think that it was a setup to exploit and encourage people who are angry and a little off. There's some in every big crowd to go wild and make the conservatives look bad. And now it's a clampdown on everybody's freedoms.
Okay. Next is going to be TJump. Then I'm going to go to Destiny before Shift, because Shift's talked more than Destiny.
Yeah, so a few things I wanted to comment on. Merrick mentioned that the difference between the BLM protests and the January 6th was that BLM has like a legitimate claim to the fact that their group has been prejudiced against for the past X number of years. I mean, having a reason you think that they should be allowed to try to overthrow the government doesn't make it not trying to overthrow the government. It's just doing it with a reason that you adhere to. And so the fact that you think that reason is legitimate doesn't mean that their treason is less treason than the Republicans' reasons of what they think is legitimate. If they're taking land from the American government and preventing any type of policing of that land, it's literally just successful treason in the case of the BLM case, whereas the January 6th riot was a failed treason, if anything. But I think there's no evidence either of those things were planned, like on the BLM side or the January 6th side. Like there is no federal evidence that the storming of the Capitol was actually planned by any group. It was just kind of a crime of passion that just happened, just like the burning of the police station. I think it's just like any protest, it just got out of hand. I don't think there was any organization that was legitimately planning to do this. And I don't see any evidence presented by any of the investigating organizations that indicate that. To me, it seems like, and the reason I'm comparing this to BLM is because the question is like, how should we see the January 6 riots? And I think we should see the January 6 riots as equivalent to the BLM riots. It's just a political kind of motivated riot in order to try and push a political ideology. I don't know how we should see those things. Probably don't see them as bad as most other people do, but however we decide to see one is probably about the same as we should decide to see the other. And then of course we should incorporate death count and property damage as to how bad they are, but I don't see the January 6th riot as sufficiently worse in any case.
Destiny.
Okay, so recentering around rather than trying to quantify damage or look at the number of people dead, I think the reason why the January 6th riots come off as such a big deal to people is because these were unique and that it seems like the people that were here protesting were doing so specifically to stop a democratic process, and specifically because of messaging that they'd received, like quite literally from the president of the United States. I think that's why there's like a unique kind of bad taste at our mouths relating to January 6th over the entirety of the BLM protests. Not to say that the rioting was okay, although I do think there is a big difference between rioting against a police station versus rioting at the Capitol to overthrow a democratic process. But I think that it was Trump leading the charge, essentially, with the propaganda from the top down about how the election was insecure, the election was stolen, you need to fight back into your country, Pence has failed us. I think that when that kind of messaging comes from the president of the United States, and not like in a vague, like, well, you know, like maybe, you know, crime rates are, but like in a very direct, like your country is being stolen from you, like we need to fight back. When that kind of stuff is being said over and over again from the president, and then you end up having a huge protest that turns kind of ugly, and then you end up getting people storming a Capitol building, I think that there's a legitimate cause there for concern, where it's like, well, this is a pretty unique event. It is probably a pretty negative thing that should be avoided in the future. And I think it's okay to look at it in the uniquely horrible way that it was done, as a uniquely horrible event, not just another riot.
Can I respond to that really quick? So, if
Sure,
you're gonna you know, approach the merits of it that way and say it's uniquely bad because of that, well, like the BLM and Antifa riots are uniquely bad because they attacked the very foundation of what America is and called America a racist country and said our Constitution is racist and said, you know, the country was actually not founded in 1776, it was founded in 1619, and really attacked the country to its core. So, you know, if that's what your argument is, actually BLM and Antifa are even worse. Moreover, though, there are some genuine concerns about the election integrity in this country. And so if the lesson that you're going to take from January 6th is that we need to crush these people instead of actually addressing their good faith concerns about election integrity, that's really messed up. You know, actually, public confidence in the election is a really important thing. And when people, when you change the election laws and you get rid of security mechanisms that we have in our elections so that the public no longer trusts the election outcomes, maybe that's a time to think and say, hey, you know, actually we do need people to believe in the elections. Maybe we shouldn't do all of these insane election laws that destroy the integrity. So you guys are taking the exact wrong lesson from it.
What you just said is so incredibly true and incredibly important. The last half, not the first half. Everything in the first half was insane and stupid. I don't know who the fuck you're even talking to for it. But for the public needing confidence in the electoral process, that is incredibly important. Unfortunately, the undermining of that process came from the big man himself, came from Donald Trump.
No, that came from Democrats changing the laws.
No, it didn't, because half the laws that you guys claim, you didn't even know when they were changed. Not to mention that every single one of these laws were tested in court, because of course every motherfucker was suing. Fucking states were suing. States were suing other states. I think Texas was taking other states to court to try to get their election laws challenged. So you better fucking believe that if there was a law that somebody didn't like, there was a federal challenge to it. And guess what? All those federal fucking courts, you know, love him or hate him, Trump did a really good job at appointing judges to them. But despite all of the federal judges that were appointed by Republicans, despite all of the Trumps that Trump and Trump's cronies made to get some of these things overturned, despite all of the other challenges to the processes, despite all of the other evidence of the videos of the ballot box stuffing, despite trying to take it to the Supreme Court, all of these systems that, ironically enough, you said earlier, Republicans had no representation. They did have representation. They had both halves of Congress. They had complete control of the executive branch, and they had control of the judicial branch. The idea that through all of this, they still didn't manage to get any single noteworthy challenge through. And you're still going to sit here and tell me the election wasn't secure, despite the fact that Barr himself rebuked Trump, despite the fact that the FBI, alongside Barr, investigated these machines and said, no, they look pretty secure to me, despite the fact that every single intelligence agency that commented on these issues said, nope, everything looks secure. You're going to sit here and try to peddle shit about how, like, Democrats hyped up Russiagate while you're fabricating responses from Trump about our election machines when he's probably never even stepped inside an election booth. Like, come on. You have no value, you have no actual reason to say
you're conflating.
Concern. No,
you're conflating two things. Hold on, you're conflating two different things.
Let me finish my response before you ramble again, okay? You're trying to say there are genuine concerns about election integrity. There are no genuine concerns. There are a lot of concerns by Americans, but only because they were misled by Trump to believe it, and that is my entire basis by which I say the January 6th stuff was horrible, because it was uniquely horrible because a bunch of Americans, apparently you included, were misled by the President of the United States to think that their country was undergoing election fraud, which never was proved to happen by anybody, including Trump's entire government.
Okay, so you're conflating two things, and you're talking about something that I wasn't talking about. So there's one thing is having mechanisms in place that do not allow us to verify whether the election is free and fair. For example, not checking voter ID. not requiring signature match. If you don't check voter ID and you don't check signature match, then it becomes very hard to say at the end of the day that was a free and fair elections. You're talking about whether there was hard proof later on. Here's the thing: it's very difficult to prove fraud, especially when you've got laws in place that make it even more difficult. For example, not requiring signature match, not requiring voter ID, et cetera, et cetera. So when the Democrats for 20 and 30 years, and you're talking about the courts not, accepting challenges. Again, that's a different thing. But more importantly, it's the Democrats and leftists that have infiltrated the courts in a lot of ways, where you've got judicial activist courts that are literally throwing out voter ID laws and saying voter ID laws are invalid and things like that. And so, that's what's driving this. Democrats for 30 years have destroyed the election integrity. And so now you've got people that don't trust the election because we don't have these security measures.
Did you trust the election when Trump won?
I've had concerns about our election integrity.
No. Hold on. You on Twitter saying, I don't know if Trump's election was legitimate because he won.
I never said that.
Because you're a partisan hack, right? You only care about the election results that don't agree with you.
I never said that about Biden's election either. What are you talking about, Destiny? I never said that Biden's election's not.
The thing is that like nobody cried election fraud when Republicans were winning in landslides during the Trump terms, right? Nobody was talking about checking signature matching or voter ID. Like, we have these laws all over the country. They're different from state to state. We have yet to prove any major election fraud. Every time it's looked into, my understanding is the 2 times it looked into, it was Republicans that were committing more fraud than the other. Was it in North Dakota or another one where there was like a box of ballots, or like, you always get these like random stories, but anytime they go to try and find all this election fraud, they typically don't find it. Like, it just doesn't seem to be a thing.
Because like, if you want to
cry that we need voter ID or we need signature matching, and you know what? I won't even say that's crying. I think there could be arguments there. That's fine, but holy fuck, you are more than 20 stones throws away, okay, from there was election fraud because of mail-in ballots and the election was fucking stolen, okay? Saying I did not get my voter ID laws, that's not the same as there was election fraud 100% and the election was stolen. We need to go and riot in the fucking Capitol.
I agree.
Then why are you talking about them? Nobody's
isn't
talking
just
about voter
something-
ID law here.
Yeah,
This isn't just
about
something that
Republicans do, though.
Lecture.
I mean, how
Are
many
you
years
okay
did we
with the
deal
down
with
ballot?
Okay, one second. Okay, I want to make sure that we get the other people on the list to talk, which is going to be Shift, then actually IRI, then Cam. Shift.
Okay, I made this reference during the Hippy Dippy recruitment podcast, so I'm gonna do it here too. Tom Scott did a beautiful video on election integrity, and he brought up the case of Estonia and the idea of electronic voting as the most secure way to run an election. And there's a caveat with that. Obviously, you don't have to actually commit election fraud. You just have to make people think that there's election fraud. Any bad actor can pull that off. Fan, I understand where you're coming from where you say people don't have confidence in their elections. That is a very good point. However, not only did I fucking address that earlier, like, I don't know if you're not listening to me or if, like, I'm going crazy here. Because I said, I get what you're coming from. I do. Like, I swear to God, I do. But any of the actions of January 6th had jack shit to do with actually appealing to the correct people to actually get their concerns like answered. There was no evidence of fraud the same way there's no evidence that anybody planned January 6th. And then you have the nerve to say, like, or I'm sorry, now I'm just coming into the entire conversation. Somebody had the nerve to say something about BLM and Antifa being worse than by objective measures, it being worse, and to validate that with, well, whatever they're fighting for doesn't make it a difference. Like, yo, so when, and I hate to keep going backwards, but apparently y'all like to skip history class. So 1964 to 1965, the civil rights riots that caused LBJ to pass, I might be wrong on that, the Civil Rights Act. Like, at some point, marginalized groups have consistently been at war with the oppressive systems of police officers, of government, to get them to enact actual change that will do better, since the people in the country seem to not want to do better. So, like, Antifa, BLM, let's stick to BLM because Antifa's a whole nother rabbit hole. Like, is BLM not an extension of that? Are we not saying there's still issues that you did not address? There are not laws in place to protect us from these things happening? Are these things happening at all? And I will repeat for the last time. Yes, they are happening because I exist in this world. Like, I don't know what you want me to, how do you want me to, like, get this across to you? But BLM has a legitimate cause. Are there actions matching that cause? Fuck no. Are there bad actors within it that have more power than the people on the ground who are actually talking about what needs to be changed? Absolutely. But like January 6th is nothing more than a 8chan poster talking about I'm Q and I want to, like, come on, man. And I'm going to end it on this point because somebody said it and it pissed me the fuck off. The statement, stop killing black people, is not a political statement.
Okay. We're now going to throw it over to IRI is actually next. Then Cam.
Listen, lecture fan, I love you, man. I've known you a long time here, but you know you trust the results of the down ballot races, right? You accept that all those elections went fine where Trump was at the top. And why do you have no issue with states like Florida and Texas? Does it happen to be because Trump won those states? Is it just states that Trump lost that the problem is? I mean, really? Come on, bro. Attorney General William Barr, as Destiny said there was no widespread fraud. He had no reason to do that. Trust me, I'm sure he looked real hard to try to find some. And in fact, most of the cases we've seen of voter fraud is people trying to vote for Trump illegally. And where is that pesky Kraken, man? We're still waiting.
Okay, Barr also said that mail-in ballots are the most susceptible to voter fraud, as did the Jimmy Carter Baker Commission. Everybody that's looked at it said this: all mail ballots are more susceptible to voter fraud. And then about the down ballot races in Florida and Texas, notice that I have not sat here and said that I believe 100% that there was mass voter fraud and that Trump won the election. I never said that. What I said is that there are genuine, legitimate concerns about these laws that Democrats have put on the books in various states over the last 20 to 30 years that have led to a massive drop in the public confidence in elections and have led to January 6th and riots and people engaging in violence.
You know
and
why?
your guys' response to that, instead of addressing that on a good faith basis and say, hey, you know what? It is insane to not have voter ID. It is insane to do all mail ballots and send them out, just sprinkle millions of ballots out across the land and then hope they come back and everything's fine. That is insane. Let's address this and let's address these good faith concerns and try to raise No, instead of that, you attack people and you keep pushing these insane laws all so that the Democrats can win elections, because you know what? You guys need uninformed, ignorant people voting that don't have any. That's literally how you got Democrats win elections.
That's not true because there are more
ideas,
Republicans than Democrats in all courts across the United States right now. Sorry.
Okay, so this is like to everybody in here across the aisle. Can we stop like pretending that it's just Republicans that so distrust in election integrity? And Destiny, you said this earlier, that it came from the big man himself, Trump. And I think you'll probably agree with what I'm about to say. It's definitely coming from Democrats too. I mean, we dealt with the Russia hoax for how long? That led to an impeachment, which I would argue is worse than a bunch of morons storming the Capitol building with no clear plan. Because an impeachment trial actually can result in the ejection of a legitimate president. And they didn't just do it once, they did it twice.
Okay, first of all, when you say Russia hoax, there's two different ways that we can go with this. In terms of Russia actually flipping votes, that was never the main contention. The main contention was that Russia was operating with foreign agents within the United States without proper disclosure, which they were. And the Mueller investigation turned over those indictments. It revealed some of those organizations were working here. The most notable one being the it's IRA, Internet Research Agency, I think is who they were called, that were running a whole bunch of social media accounts that were trying to influence Americans to vote a certain way or to undermine confidence in the electoral process. If you're calling that a hoax, this stuff was real.
Do you think that Trump colluded with Russia and had some kind of organized campaign to make sure that he was installed as the president? Because that's what he was impeached for. Am I wrong?
The second impeachment had to do with the Ukraine stuff. At this point, I don't even. IRI can speak the first.
No, you're right. I'm sorry. Yeah, that was the Ukraine stuff. You're right. That was the Ukraine phone call, and that was also bullshit. So
wait. The part where he threatened to withhold aid that was already approved by Congress. That was bullshit. That was all fabricated.
Yeah,
he did nothing wrong.
So we agree.
Trump did nothing wrong.
Wait, he did nothing wrong, or it was all fabricated? Which one? I'm getting two different answers here. So he didn't threaten to withhold the aid, or he did threaten to withhold aid, but he had the right to do that as a president.
We have the transcript from the phone call. Everything that Democrats are saying about it, it was the made up part.
I don't even think that he mentioned withholding aid in the phone call, like at all. Did he? I mean, it's been a long time since I've read the transcript.
He asked,
without jumping to the whole Ukraine issue. Let's say
focus,
because we were already on the Russia hoax stuff, which is already still off topic. Okay, there were credible there were credible issues that were brought up in relation to Russia having some level of penetration into our media atmosphere in ways that we were not aware of. I mean, if we don't believe this, I don't know what to say. You can read the results of any of the Mueller investigations or any of the digging there. And,
Oh my
and
gosh,
that
they bought a
that is
Facebook ad.
fundamentally,
Oh, no.
that is a fundamentally different thing. Lecture fan, you sound like you get all your news from
Wait,
Facebook.
but
okay?
Destiny,
You're like
but
a prime
Destiny.
target to this, okay? But that's a fundamentally different claim than saying that like the votes were actually rigged, which is the claim that Trump is making. That would be more akin to a Democrat saying like Russia rigged the votes. Sure.
Destiny. But okay, so you're right. The first impeachment was the Ukraine thing. You're right. That was my mistake. I'm sorry. But there were definitely Democrat politicians in this country pushing the lie that Trump was colluding with Russia to ensure his installment as president. Absolutely, 100%.
Sure, there might have been, but like in that case, do you want me to I'll condemn them both. I'm going to condemn both of them before I'm going to give Trump a pass on saying that the election was stolen, right? So I don't know what the point of this is.
I don't think the election was stolen, and I said like when I said that, I said that I thought you'd probably agree with what I was about to say, but like I just don't want this like feeling that it's just Republicans that are like kind of
Democrats said
creating
Bush stole
distrust
the
in the
election.
electoral
Yeah.
system.
Democrats
How
said
have you
Bush
not
stole the
brought up
election.
Bernie getting robbed? That's the standard right-wing talking point, right? You're supposed to bring up Bernie got robbed.
Well,
It's
he
not
did,
like Trump
too.
is a Pied Piper. People have been worrying about so-called voter fraud for decades, and now more than ever because we have a dishonest country. We have a dishonest establishment and a media. So it's a legitimate concern, and Trump was not. It's not just because Trump lied to them, quote unquote, lied, and I don't believe that he thinks that he's lying. By the way, it's people who were seriously concerned about it.
Okay.
I mean, like, first of all, Trump, when Trump is literally making phone calls to governor.
Destiny, you're gonna finish this statement, then we're gonna wrap this up. Merrick and Paradigm, you raise your hand, so you'll be the first to do any statements.
Was it the Georgia governor that Trump literally called saying like we need to find 31,482 votes? Like, how can you think that this is a good faith effort to investigate the electoral process rather than just trying to win the election? And also, as IRR said, it's so interesting to me that all of the votes for Biden were fake. But all of the down ballot votes that voted for Biden but then voted Republican lawmakers, all of those were legitimate. Like, it's so obviously selected for based on the partisan hackery. I don't know how you can see it as any other way. And then again, like, we have had so many independent organizations, I mean, within the federal government, like our intelligence agencies, the fucking FBI and the DOJ all looked into the election shit. How the fuck is there all this goddamn widespread fraud, but nobody can fucking find it anywhere? When I feel like I'm getting a leak out of the White House every other fucking week for the brand of toilet paper that Trump wipes his ass with, how the fuck is there all this coordinated, top-down, bottom-up, widespread fraud, but nobody fucking found any? All I had were the same shitty 3 videos that were shown over and over again with a box sliding under a table where somebody's like, there they are, that's all the fucking ballots. Like they were the lost fucking ballots from the ship of Atlantis that sunk off the Florida coast with the fucking hanging chads. Like, what the fuck? I don't know how you can make the claim over and over and over again that all this fraud happened, but it's not reported. We don't see. Where is it? Where is it? That's what I want to know.
Here's the point. When people commit fraud, they try to hide it.
Lecture fan, in the future, please listen. Okay, so we're wrapping up. If you want to make any statements, you can. Don't worry. Merrick, apparently her cat turned off the computer. The cat agrees with Hake, I assume. So we're going to start it with a paradigm shift for wrap-ups.
All right, closing arguments. I did learn a lot just listening. At least I learned like what other people think. I heard a lot of bullshit. I'm not gonna cut it here. I heard a lot of bullshit, and Destiny and IRI cover this way harder than I could ever. So I'm just gonna say again, stop killing black people is not a political statement. Is there reasons to believe in election fraud? I'm going to bring up Estonia again. Please look up Estonia. Please look up their voting systems, and it'll give you a perfect representation of what happened in this country on a very small scale and how it can escape outwards. As far as election fraud, there has been no significant evidence of that. As far as January 6th and how we will remember it, I think that we're going to have this issue of people trying to downplay it because the severity of it doesn't hit us that hard because we are in an information age. We share things through computers, through social media, and it's easy for us to have so much discourse that it seems like another regular day. This was an event unique to itself because it stood in opposition to the systems that we believe in and that we trust above all. There should be no distrust in this market because we were literally watching. You've had Destiny said it already. You've had multiple people look over the votes. You've had recounts. You've had court cases. You've had this. You've had that. You've had phone calls where you've literally heard people saying, "Yo, can you help me get these votes?" Like, if the words coming out of these people's own mouths don't tell you that there's just no issue and people ran on a lie, then I don't know how to make you empathize with like the years and decades and centuries of abuse that America does to its own citizens through the same legal system that you wish now to tear down because it didn't give you the man you wanted to win.
Okay, next is going to be the Catwoman.
Okay, I'm sorry. I actually don't know where we're at now since my cat decided to turn my computer off. What's happening? Ending statements?
Yes.
Okay, closing statements are, I think that there is an abundance of evidence that shows that there were several paramilitary groups there. There was lots of planning across lots of social media sites. I realized that I probably should have clarified that 8kun is actually 8chan. It's literally the same website. I can understand why it would come across as obscure and why I was very confused as to why we were acting like this is not like a well-known website. But it was all over Twitter. It was all over Facebook. We know there was planning. We know that there were far-right influences there. We know that President Trump heavily encouraged it. We know that the purpose was to get them to stop from certifying the election. We know that there was the intention of people to murder senators. We know all of these things happened, and I think trying to say that it wasn't really that big of a deal is disingenuous cope.
Okay. Next, we're going to throw it over to TJump.
Oh, next. Was not expecting to be next. All right, so still just seems to be like people think they have justified reasons to try to overthrow the government. The BLM side thinks they have a justified reason. The Republican side thinks they have a justified reason, and they both try to overthrow the government in their own ways. One tries to overthrow the judicial branch, and one tries to overthrow the congressional one. So I'm just not seeing a difference. Like, number of deaths is higher on the Black Lives Matter side. Property damage is higher on the Black Lives Matter side. They've actually successfully taken land for months at a time away from the American government. I mean, how should we see the January 6th riots? Like, pretty much the same as the Black Lives Matter riots. They're not significantly worse, and we should treat them both as bad because they're both bad. And we should try to like change things by electing people to not be idiots, which is tough, but I don't see that we should see this as any significantly worse than the BLM riots.
Okay. Next is going to be Lecture Fan.
Okay. Well, I like how Destiny pretty much admitted that the BLM and Antifa riots, in terms of number and property damage and death, were way worse, and then claims, oh, well, it's because it was trying to interfere with an undemocratic process. Well, the Electoral College is undemocratic. Democrats say the Electoral College is undemocratic all the time. They cry about it all the time, which, if that's the case, so is the U.S. Senate. And guess what? That's on purpose. A constitutional republic is about having individual rights that can't be interfered with, even if the majority wants to interfere with them. So there's a reason we have a constitution, and there's a reason we don't just, democracy is, two wolves and a sheep voting on what's for dinner. It's not a good system. It's called having a constitutional republic. But the point is, frankly, the best argument for objecting to the electors on January 6th was actually the fact that a lot of these states changed their election laws without going through the legislatures of those states. And so you've got Democrats unilaterally changing the election laws to make the elections less secure, and then running these unconstitutional elections and getting rid of things like signature match, getting rid of voter ID, accepting ballots after the election is over, doing all mail ballots, doing all this crazy stuff that's obviously going to destroy people's confidence in the election, and then being surprised when people don't trust the election results. So look, we need to secure the elections. That's the most important part. And thank goodness we've had a lot of state legislatures following the 2020 elections that have passed new laws to provide new security provisions in our elections, and I think that's a great thing. And we think we need more of that. We need voter ID. We need verifying citizenship. We need to not have all mail elections. We need to have people show up on election day. We need to keep ballots in a single room. I mean, that's how you have a secure election. You have all the ballots in a single room with poll watchers and people watching. People come in, they show their ID, verify their citizenship, they get a ballot. You literally taking a helicopter and dropping ballots, millions and millions of ballots, just sending them out, and then allowing ballot harvesting and people going and picking them up, and it's all kinds of problems. And it tells you everything you know. When Democrats, in order to win elections, have to allow paid ballot harvesting, and they don't require voter ID and getting rid of signature match. What does that tell you when that's what the Democrats want? And the reality is that having a secure election actually protects the right to vote, because the truth is that when you're a citizen and you validly vote, if there's one other illegal vote, then they just took away your right to vote. So it's actually the conservatives and the Republicans that want to protect the right to vote.
Okay, next is going to be IRI.
Well, I think January 6th is a really sad day, honestly. A lot of these people were duped and misled by dear leader at the top as he gleefully watched them violently assault police officers for 3 hours in hand-to-hand combat, and sat at a little table on the side of the Oval Office and enjoyed it for 2 hours. And the January 6th Select Committee is just getting warmed up, my friends, so hold on, the ride's about to get bumpy here. And the FBI their investigation is still active, even though this Cam guy has said multiple times that they haven't found anything. I don't know if you know how the FBI works. Again, I hate to teach you some stuff, but maybe you learned today. The FBI does not release evidence when they have active investigations, period. So I understand they haven't come to a conclusion yet, but it takes time when you have 1,000 people break the law at the same time and desecrate our Capitol Hill. And you know what? As these people have admitted their guilt in court and been sentenced, almost every single one of them has admitted that they were duped and they will never again be involved in politics, and they can't believe this happened. So it's kind of weird to hear Hake talk about how these people actually really believed it and felt it when most of them admit that they were wrong in the end. And finally, I just want to say, when Trump won, I accepted it. I wondered what happened. I was curious. Did Russia do something? I felt like, whoa, Russia pulled a fast one on us. But then we had the Mueller investigation. I said, you know what? Let's wait and see what happens here. I wasn't sitting there going, you know what? Trump's not the president, and there was so much election fraud, and release the Kraken. I accepted that Trump won. And you know what I did? I got involved, and I worked hard, and we got 81 million of my friends to come out and vote for Joseph R. Biden as our new president. So it's time to accept it. Like Joe Biden said, you don't just love this country when you win. You got to love it when you lose too. And put in some hard work. Get working, Lecture. Start knocking on doors, buddy.
Okay, next is going to be Hake.
God bless.
Okay, so the downplayed BLM insurrection and terror attacks across the country, about those blacks who are complaining and the others who are grandstanding on their behalf, they need fathers. They need morals. They need character reform. They don't need police reform. And so they don't have a legitimate complaint because they need to look at themselves. We have a cultural problem of hate and blame and excuse making. And the relatively minimal violence of January 6th there pales in comparison to that of Occupy, BLM, Antifa, quite obviously. And especially when you compare the average conservative rally versus the average liberal one. Conspicuously, Antifa's Black Bloc was absent from this big protest, this Stop the Steal rally on January 6th, except perhaps maybe some removed their Black Bloc to reveal some MAGA gear. I don't know what that was about, but I saw that on Tucker's documentary, Patriot Purge. I don't think there's a serious investigation on what really happened. A lot of people who were convicted groveled to the government and liberals under duress, on advice from like liberal public defender lawyers, trying to get a lesser sentence, trying to get out of jail. Those were not serious admissions of being duped. The only big lie is the lie that everybody buys across the board, across the aisles, of anger. You don't have a right to be angry. We don't have country integrity, much less election integrity. We have open borders. We have mass immigration. We have, since the 60s, really, we have dishonest coverage, fake cries of racism and sexism. The real Americans are disheartened at losing their country. So it's not just voter fraud. It's just the country's being subverted and changed before their eyes by people who don't have morals and their same morals and freedom. The January 6th Select Committee is a joke. It's a bunch of Democrats and 2 failed Republicans. The FBI and so-called intelligence establishment, they're a bunch of liberals and rhinos. They're anti-Trump people. We all know this. They were constantly working against Trump. Biden and Pelosi and the rest of the phony politicians, they're clearly politically motivated phonies who have no concern about whoever's right or whoever gets hurt. All the people, again, are too busy hating one another over their false ideologies to care about the real truth or show love toward the marginalized Trump supporters.
Okay. Now I'm going to throw it over to Destiny.
Yeah, so I mean, like everybody likes to try to look over at the BLM stuff because I think they know deep down that the January 6th stuff is pretty indefensible, even though they'll try to defend it while also playing whataboutisms with other types of protests. The January 6th stuff I think was uniquely bad, as I said before, because we were basically getting propaganda, conspiracy bullshit from our president, from the president of the United States. And anytime you have the actual president of the United States, the guy that arguably has at his fingertips more information about probably any part of the world than any other individual ever in the history of all of mankind, when this guy is peddling bullshit and it causes your own citizens to try to rise up and overthrow the democratic process of electing your next leader, a process that is just, I mean, fundamentally important to the functioning of our country, I think that's always going to be a pretty monumental event. I think it should be seen as a monumental event. I think it's pretty sad that there are some Republicans that still try to downplay it. And yeah.
Okay, Cam Higby.
Yeah, so like I said in the beginning, I don't condone the January 6th riot. I don't think it was a good thing. I think it was bad. Shouldn't have happened. But it really was a small splinter group of the people that were actually there. 90% of the people were not doing anything right. But that doesn't change the fact, as we talked about earlier, that a lot was done by that small group of people when we talked about the 7% of peaceful BLM or 7% of violent BLM riots. Now, like I said earlier, I think the reason that everybody wants to compare this to the BLM riots, and I generally try to stray away from this line of argumentation, is because it is similar, right? And they happened very, very close together. The BLM riots were objectively worse, and they didn't get nearly as much attention from members of Congress, and some of the members of Congress even condoned these attacks. Now, I'm a really important person. You said, again, that the FBI investigation is still going on and they don't release information. Well, they clearly released a progress report. It was reported on by Reuters, and they literally said that they have no evidence that it was coordinated, again, a year later. And 1 year of investigating this, as you put it, the largest investigation in the entire country. In 1 year, they found nothing. So what does that tell you? The next thing you said, the January 6th Select Committee is just ramping up. Okay, well, like Hake said, it's a joke. Why is it a joke? Because it's a one-sided committee investigating something that they're all using as a political showboat with no opposition whatsoever. They've got Kinzinger and Liz Cheney, who both side with everybody else on that committee, and they have no challengers whatsoever. And Nancy Pelosi actually denied the challengers, Jim Banks and Jim Jordan, which caused basically no Republicans to be on that committee except Cheney and Kinzinger, who really aren't Republicans. Yeah, what else did I take notes on? Yeah, it's a joke. Destiny said that it's like a whataboutism. I don't agree. I think that there are things that are similar, and people kind of connect them and are outraged by the difference in reaction to the two things. I don't think somebody said that it was heavily encouraged by Trump. I don't think that the actual riot was heavily encouraged by Trump. I think that he has some part in, like spreading the election fraud lie. But he literally said just prior to the attack, go out and let your voices be peacefully and patriotically heard. Him and his son had 4 months been at their protest, praising their supporters for being peaceful in a time of like so much political violence with the BLM stuff. So yeah, that's about it that I have to say. Oh, and Republicans are not trying to tear down the system. Like somebody said, Republicans are trying to tear down the system. If that was the case, the system would be torn down because it only takes 3% of the population to overthrow the government. Obviously, they're not actively trying to. There hasn't been an attack since last year.
Okay, so what I'm going to do for this next topic, I'm going to put a 30-second timer on intros and outros and ask people to keep it brief so that we don't go overboard. Okay, wonderful. The next topic is we're coming on another anniversary, and that is in about 13 days. It will be 1 year since Biden was inaugurated as president of the United States. And so my question is, how do you review Biden's first year in office? I'm going to start with Lecture Fan.
Well, I just thought it was hilarious when Destiny debated Rob Noor, and Destiny's whole argument for Biden's presidency success was spending the COVID relief bill, which is like just one of like 100 of these blowout spending packages Congress passes. Look, Biden's done nothing. It's been a total failure. We could go down the list one after the other. It's been a disaster.
Okay. Next, it's going to be TJump.
Yeah, so I think Biden's doing a terrible job. I think that just his overt amount of spending to try and fix everything is causing a huge amount of inflation, which is typical of the Democratic terms, because corporations are much less trusting of Democratic leaders, and so you do have a lot more inflation during Democratic governments, which is a problem, especially because we're just coming out of a COVID pandemic, and so I think that because of a lot of Biden's decisions, the inflation is going to continue at a much higher rate than if we had a Republican, just because companies like Republicans better because they make more money. I think his decision to pull out of Afghanistan was really sketchy. A lot of Americans got trapped there. And I mean, the Taliban decided the date we were supposed to leave by. The impact on the starvation of the Afghan people is horrible, but that was a tough decision. So I think that in a combination with his bad economic decisions, he's been forced to make some really tough decisions regarding what happens to people's lives, and I don't think his decision on those was the best. I think there was a better way to do the pullout rather than just a cold turkey just leave. So I'm definitely not happy with Biden, and I never thought he was going to be a good president. That's why I didn't vote for him or anybody. But yeah, overall, I think Biden's terrible. We shouldn't have had any of those people in office who were available, and so...
Okay, 30 seconds is over.
Cool.
Well, it's actually been 50 seconds. But I'm going to throw it over to Paradigm Shift.
I am not a terrible fan of Biden, but I am under the impression and understanding that we are still in a pandemic, and I understand the absolute will of what people want him to do versus what he's actually doing. I am very disillusioned from Biden's first year in office. It feels very weak. It feels very underwhelming, and it's not giving people a lot of confidence in the Democrats. But I am willing to let bygones be bygones and say I've seen at least some incremental provisions in my communities and communities across the nation that have at least helped in some way or some form. And I'm just going to have to keep hoping that I see that progress through the rest of his term.
Okay. Next is going to be Merrick.
So I actually am not as enraged about Biden as I think most leftists are. If Twitter is any indication. I don't think that he's been nearly as colossal a total failure as I anticipated, or as everyone in my circles is saying he is. I do break with leftists in that I don't think withdrawing from Afghanistan was ultra super pog, but the only reason I think that is because I really don't like that a lot of Afghan people are going to die now. That really, really sucks. I really don't like that the Taliban is in control now. That really, really sucks. But yeah, unemployment is really low. He's doing a lot of things for the environment that I didn't actually think he was going to do, so that's pretty cool. He did some stuff for COVID more so than I thought he was going to do, so I would give him a meh, but I thought it was going to be bad.
Okay. Now we're going to throw it over to Hake.
Joe Biden has pushed nothing but evil since he's been taking office. It's like Obama continued, but we're already more corrupt and degenerate and accepting of evil. And it's a shame. He's brought back abortion, fought for Roe v. Wade as a so-called Catholic. He reinstituted, I think, the Mexico City policy, or took it away, or whatever the thing is, to fund abortions internationally. He stopped building the wall. He's trying to let as many illegals and so-called asylum seekers in. He favored the communist shutdowns, the overreaction to the virus. He reinstituted the LGBT agenda in the military and is fighting against normal Americans, trying to so-called root out extremism in the military. And these people are not trustworthy in judging who's extreme. They're extreme. And he's busy witch hunting whites and joining in on the attack on men and on Christians. And he's endlessly lying, so it's a shame.
Okay, next is going to be Cam Higby.
Yeah, so I think so far, colossal failure. The Afghanistan withdrawal obviously resulted in the deaths of hundreds of people and 13 U.S. service members. And attached to that, we also have the drone strike that killed 10 civilians, 7 of them being children under the age of 10 years old. Let's see, we've also got the pandemic claiming that, he's not going to shut the country down. He's going to shut the virus down. Here we are almost a year later. The border crisis. There's also a thing with the census Trump was working on. He didn't want to include, he had policy ready to not include illegal immigrants in the census, and Biden shot that down. That was one of the things he did in his first 100 days, which I completely disagree with, because that's almost like a 3/5 compromise kind of tactic, where these people don't have the right to vote, but they're still going to be included in the census in whichever state they choose to go to, which is likely going to be a blue state, and that results in that state getting more electoral voting power, congressional seats, etc. And then he falls asleep during climate crisis or during the climate summit and other times, and he obviously has dementia.
Okay, I'm gonna throw it now over to Destiny.
Biden is a true American hero. What an unbelievable first year. I don't think anybody thought that he was going to come this far. We cut childhood poverty in half with an amazing COVID relief bill, with an amazing quasi-UBI, the thing that Yang said he was going to do, Biden almost delivered on. We got an increase in the child tax credit, which was historic relief for impoverished families, for working class families. We got the infrastructure bill that he brought some, 10 or 15 Republican senators over. Nobody said it. Everybody said it couldn't be done. Nobody thought you could get Republicans to vote on massive legislation. The largest infrastructure bill passed in U.S. history. Okay, Trump couldn't get anything done. McCain stopped Trump from even getting rid of healthcare. And look at Biden, his first year, an historically divided Senate, 50-50. He manages to pass major legislation, bringing Republicans on board. Manages to get us out of Afghanistan, finally. It was a bit of a road bump to do it, for sure, but we're gone. We're actually out of it. How long has it been since we actually left the fucking country in the Middle East? Trump said he would do it. It didn't happen. Bush said he would do it. It didn't happen. Obama said he would do it. It didn't happen. And guess what? I don't actually remember Bush said he would do it. But guess what? We finally got out under Joe Biden, who was willing to take the political hit to do it. What an American hero. Over 100 million vaccinations. He beat his timeline by twice as fast as he said he would. Just an amazing president. Every side, looking at him on camera, he's a strong man. He walks up and down the stairs. Great. Way less belly fat than Trump has. Just an American hero. I almost would volunteer for the military if I wasn't so old. I would join just to serve under Chief of Commander, or Commander-in-Chief Joe Biden.
All right.
Muted.
He's being censored right now by the Republicans on this panel. Bring it back. Your mic is muted. IRI, you have it muted in Discord. You push the mute button in Discord. It's in Discord. There you go. Go ahead.
My bad. Listen, I was so excited. I didn't want them to hear all my clapping and cheering. Look, Biden inherited a giant steaming pile of dog crap, aka the Trump administration, okay? This guy took apart our federal government. He had a lot of work to do. Trump didn't help with the transition, didn't even show up to the inauguration. So come on, give the guy a little bit of credit. And as Destiny pointed out, he's got a 50-50 split Senate, a 3-seat lead in the House, still got infrastructure done. And Destiny, it was 19 Republican senators that joined him on that. That's incredible. Trump failed to do infrastructure for 4 years, the lowest hanging fruit on the tree. Americans were begging for investment in infrastructure. And look at this. The stock market keeps hitting record highs. We just hit 3.9% unemployment. We pulled out of Afghanistan and the longest war in America's history. I think we were doing fantastic in the summer. Remember, we were all getting ready without our masks, going to Lollapalooza until the Delta variant. And the 39 million morons who refuse to get vaccinated are the reason why we're not out of this pandemic. It's got nothing to do with base Biden and his mandates. I hope to God the Supreme Court holds them up.
Okay, it is now open dialogue.
The hype is so fake. Destiny and IRI, nobody believes you guys that you're actually excited about Biden. That's so fake.
You know what?
Wait, how could you possibly say that? I don't
It's
think anybody
obvious.
thought that he could have gotten as much done in
It's
his
obvious.
first. I was starting to believe the anti-hype from you guys that we weren't going to get the infrastructure bill passed. But
Infrastructure bill is nothing. Like the Congress passes blowout spending packages all the time.
You
And
say
this is causing
it's
massive-
nothing,
Hold
but
on,
it was.
let me
wait,
finish,
wait,
Destiny. You got mad at me
you're
for
just
not letting
lying.
you finish, and now here you are interrupting me again.
Weasley little
Like,
lying.
let me at least finish.
Still
Like,
lying.
I let you finish. No, but you're saying, oh, this is so great. He got these 2 blowout spending packages done. But guess what? That deficit and that debt is causing inflation, which hurting low-income people the most. Why don't you care about low-income people who are getting killed right now by inflation?
Oh, yeah, God, yeah.
In terms of causing inflation, so the cause of inflation is complicated. To say that it's just because of spending is just not true.
I didn't
If
say
it
it's
was,
just
if it
because
wa-
of spending.
Oh, well, what do you think are the primary drivers for inflation right now?
The deficit and the debt are a huge impact on it. It's not the only thing, though.
What do you,
Oh,
okay,
you
do you think
mean-
they're the largest impact, or
It's a major impact. The
it's getting smaller every time I ask? Okay.
No, are
You
you
mean the
serious?
$8 trillion
Justin, are you seriously? You're seriously taking the position that federal deficit spending doesn't cause inflation? Are you serious?
This has been
why?
like the dragon that conservative. I don't even want to say economists, because I don't think
Okay,
it's
so no,
conservative
you're not
economists with
taking
it.
that position.
If that was the case, then I think we would have been worried about spending under Trump. We'd been worried about spending under Bush, but we're never worried about spending under Republican presidents. Only when Democratic presidents come in and they have to bail out the entire fucking country from the absolute unmitigated disaster that the Republican president left before them. So whether it was Obama coming back in through the housing crisis, or whether it was Biden coming back in through whatever the fuck Trump left the country with, right? Now all of a sudden we're worried about the spending, right? And any extra Middle Eastern country that we want to get into war with, the spending doesn't matter. Or in any other pet project, massive corporate tax cut that Republicans want to do, the spending doesn't matter. But as soon as it comes time to spending money on those same working class people that you claim to care about, now all of a sudden it's a huge fucking problem.
It seems to be the case from what I've complained about.
Oh my God, he didn't let me finish. He didn't let me finish. And I was so close. Oh, I was so close. He didn't let me finish. Can I? Okay, great. So the main driver of inflation seems to be the fact that a lot of services are closed right now. It's really hard to spend money on services. A lot of the money that we're spending right now is disproportionately being spent on goods. And goods can only be shipped in so many allotted quantities, and that seems to be the big driver of inflation. But a lot of people keep saying everything is horrible, everything is bad. But guess what? As the supply chains adapt, all of these prices are slowly coming back down again. People were worried about lumber, and in like 6 months it came back down. People are worried about other goods. It's slowly coming back down. Yeah, there's going to be bumps. Yeah, there's going to be hiccups. It's an unmitigated, unprecedented disaster in terms of the shift in spending around the world, but we're recovering. We're making it because capitalism is a great system, my friend. The supply chains will adapt and evolve. It's happened in the past, and it'll continue to happen under the glorious future, God Emperor Joe Biden.
I want to address something
Obvious
that IRI said earlier. So you said the 39 million Americans that still haven't been vaccinated. You blamed something on them. I forget what it was, but let's not forget that it was.
Yeah.
Let's not forget that it was literally this administration, the members of this administration, that were sowing distrust in the vaccine last year. Let's not forget that. Kamala
You're
Harris.
talking about Kamala
literally said-
Harris's comments. She wouldn't believe it if she heard it from
Harris,
Trump.
Biden, Cuomo, and sure, Cuomo's gone now. Sure, Cuomo literally said that he doesn't trust the federal government. He won't recommend that New Yorkers get the Trump vaccine. Kamala Harris said
I wouldn't
she
trust
get the
Trump
vaccine.
either.
Okay, well, they're weird because
Who
they're
the hell would
actually-
trust Trump? I wouldn't trust Trump with anything, dude.
For a second, it's
got
kind of
the vax.
weird. It's kind of weird that they're actually I am vaccinated. It's kind of weird that they're actually distributing the vaccine that was developed during the time of his administration right now. The same one that they were saying they didn't trust before
You
they
think
entered
Trump
office.
was in the
Isn't that
lab
kinda
with a
weird?
little beaker and a lab coat on? I don't trust what that guy says. I trust the CDC and the FDA.
Why did Kamala Harris then say she wouldn't?
Okay, weird. You trust the CDC, right? Because
She said she wouldn't trust it if she heard it from Trump.
Wait, IRI, you would trust the CDC for medical information, but you wouldn't trust President Trump? Wow, that's pretty silly, my dude. Wait, what?
Call me crazy. Call me crazy.
Okay, wait,
dude.
Cam, hold on. No, Cam, I love this talking point. I'm so curious, okay? So we talk about how Democrats sow distrust in the vaccine, okay? Are you telling me with a straight face right now? Because if we look at who's unvaccinated, right? We can look at the difference between like Republican and Democrat. We can see who's not getting vaccinated. Are you telling me that the only time Republicans wanted to listen to a black woman in their life was when Kamala Harris was telling them not to trust the vaccine?
No,
what does
I'm
that
telling
talking point even mean?
I'm telling you, okay, so if Trump were to have been reelected, do you not think that rhetoric would have continued if it wasn't the Biden administration that took over and had the responsibility of distributing the vaccine? How
I
you
do not
things
think
would have
the
been-
First of all, you're asking for like a counterfactual that I can never prove this, but no, I don't think the Democrats would have suddenly become anti-vax the same way the Republicans don't believe in fucking climate change. I don't think the Democrats will flip on those types of positions that hardcore, like Republicans seem to sometimes.
Well, they did flip really hardcore on it because as soon as they took office, they started pushing the vaccine and distributing it just like they're supposed to.
I think it was
prior to that they were
it was after the
saying that they
trials.
wouldn't get it.
It was
Andrew
after the
Cuomo
FDA.
said that-
Okay, wait,
Andrew
one second.
Cuomo
Wait,
said-
wait,
CDC
stop.
right.
Okay, one second. We need one person to talk at a time because you can't, like, we're talking over each other, okay? So we're going to have Destiny talk, then we're going to have Cam respond, okay? Destiny?
Okay.
Well, sure. The trust in the vaccines came once the trials were done and the CDC was approving them, or emergency use authorization approving them, and they were going through. And even in the prior comments we looked at, we can go look at the comments that I think Biden and Kamala Harris made comments before. It was something along the lines of like, "We'll trust the process. I'm not going to trust anything Trump says, but we'll see what like the process is or whatever." And we follow the process, and the process, has resolved itself. We have vaccines.
No, the rhetoric from these people was literally, "I'm not getting it if it comes out under the Trump administration. We don't trust the federal government right now." Yes, it was.
You're wrong.
Yes, it was. Andrew,
She didn't say anything about the federal government.
Don't trust the federal
Said
government, and I
Donald
will not recommend to
Google
New
it.
Yorkers that they get the vaccine. Kamala Harris, Joe Biden said, "I trust scientists, I trust vaccines, but I don't trust Donald Trump, and neither can the American people right now."
Nobody should trust
if
him.
if you don't think that's an illusion to people not to trust the Trump vaccine, then you're insane. And I don't think I think you're just making a non-argument right now.
She said, I will say that I would not trust Donald Trump.
If he tells me
As
to
a
get it,
credible
I'm not
source.
getting it. If he tells me to
I
get
wouldn't
it,
trust
I'm
that
not
guy
getting
with
it.
anything. If he told me I'm standing in front of you, I'd be like,
Okay,
dude, I don't even believe you right now.
Finish that quote.
Wait. Okay. So, 1 second. Let's stop for a second. Destiny, you wanted him to finish a quote?
Yeah, finish the quote. I will say that I would not trust Donald Trump, and it would have to be a credible source of information that talks about the efficacy and the reliability of whatever he's talking about, like the CDC. or the
Who
FDA.
said that? And who said that?
Kamala Harris.
Okay, Kamala Harris also said, "If Donald Trump tells me to get it, I'm not getting it." And the overall rhetoric was literally, "I don't trust the federal government. I'm not getting the vaccine under the Trump
You're
administration."
drawing that conclusion. You're drawing that conclusion, Cam. She didn't say that.
Okay.
She didn't say any of that.
Okay, I don't trust the federal government doesn't include the CDC now. Apparently, the CDC is not a
She didn't say I don't
bureaucracy
trust
within
the
the federal
government.
Federal
She didn't say anything
Let's
about
get one
that.
thing clear. I literally said when I started this point that I was talking about Democrats, not just specifically Biden, not specifically just Kamala Harris, Democrats in general.
Oh, you're moving them goalposts. They got some wheels on them. They're out in the parking lot at
This
this
is how
point.
I premised my
This case.
argument. Roll it back. This is how I premised my argument, and I did it very carefully. Like I'm
sure about that?
The goalpost. I am absolutely sure. Roll them back.
Okay.
Man, we could have President Mike Pence. Okay, we're going to go to shift.
Okay, so, whew, that was a great game of football. You're wrong about the Democrats and the left and vaccines. You're just wrong, and I'm going to explain it to you because I spent 32 hours of my life sitting here looking through footage and quotes and everything, even though it was already said. The general messaging was that so much crap was coming out of Trump's mouth, and there were so many different people between Fauci and Birx, and I still can't believe we let Stella Emanuel. I'm never letting Republicans get away with that. Y'all really had Demon Sperm Lady up there talking about some bullshit. Anyway, like, yo, the idea was that if an administration that could push all these random ass cures, just like snake oil, would then want to push out a vaccine, I don't trust it. I don't have faith in you because you literally went out of your way to say, a chloroquine and this and ivermectin and all that bullshit. Y'all just dumb. Oh my God. That's not, you're wrong. You're just wrong.
It's not an argument.
Yeah, you're just wrong is not an argument.
Okay, so I mean, when I say this, okay, I'll tell you what. Since you don't know me, I'm gonna say this real quick. When I tell somebody that they're wrong, it's not because like I disagree with you. It's like whatever the fuck you're talking about is in the realm of like. You're over there, bro. Like
Right.
that wasn't you say Democrats, you say the left. And I'm really looking out like I talk to Democrats. I
Because
talk
I'm
to the
talking
left.
about people
I'm
who are
in the cities.
Democrats
I'm interviewing
holding political
people.
office.
None of these people are saying that.
I do
None
the
of
same
these.
thing. I do the same thing. Look, bro,
So
you're
then
just
how are you talking about this in a way that makes any viable sense?
You're
Oh, the
just-
Democrats and the left were doing this. Like, no. Anyway, on to
Your-
my next point. On to
your
it because I already
citation
got to
because I don't
respond.
have one.
Inflation is at the highest level it's ever been at. That is correct. But if you look at the inflation rates for the last 10 years, not only have we bumped this ceiling before, but we've done it by spending on tax cuts and military and shit, no infrastructure, literally nothing for the American people. It was a cycle through Wall Street. You can look that up from 2013 to 2018. We've had this inflation before. We will recover. The last thing I'm gonna say is, damn, Destiny, that speech really hit, yo. Like, I'm on the Biden train. I really didn't put this in perspective, but like Obama 2008 financial crisis, like now Joe Biden, financial crisis as we're looking at Trump throwing everything and everybody's bailing out of defense stocks and y'all probably don't know about that. Sorry, PCE prices. I didn't realize how much Biden has been able to accomplish, even though nobody wants him to accomplish anything. We look at his accomplishments as they've got to be big, and I get that now. By listening to this, listening to everybody talk, I get that. We're supposed to look at Biden as like universal healthcare, like we're supposed to like the big things. These small little steps may not feel like a lot to us, but they are to a lot of people. And those are the people that matter.
Infrastructure is a communist buzzword, and Trump had the economy going until the communist shutdowns by the local governments, which were not necessary. It was playing mama, pretending to protect the people from the virus. It was fake.
Okay, so why did Trump have a $2 trillion budget? Why did Trump have a $2 trillion infrastructure proposal then that he tried to get up until even May of 2020? If it's just some communist buzzword nonsense,
because it's a reality that we're stuck with.
So is Trump a communist?
Why is there?
No, because it's a reality that we're stuck with.
Wait, stop. One at a time. I would like IRI's question to be able to be answered if possible. I would like to hear Hank respond. We don't want to talk over him.
Sure, I'd like to hear it too.
It's a reality that we're stuck with. They've set the system up so that people are dependent on the feds to do all of this stuff. But so much of this infrastructure stuff is not spent on like roads and bridges, as we all know. It's spent on like liberal values. It's a whole lot of fakeness.
But Trump had $800 billion even more that he wanted to spend money on.
Even
Is
more.
That all?
Yeah, go ahead.
So even worse liberal stuff that Trump wanted?
I doubt it, because Trump was not so subversive. Oh. He was not so subversive.
What was Trump's just patriot projects or what?
Definitely. Trump was for the country.
Okay.
Biden is for subverting the country. He's not an honest person. Trump was hated because he's told the truth. Biden is loved because he's a liar.
Isn't infrastructure a good opportunity to like make friends, not enemies? Shouldn't this be something we all come together on? Like, I don't understand how you can not be in favor of infrastructure. Like, is there a part of the bill? Was there some amount of like finance like allocated? You're like, we shouldn't spend money on that, or this just seems like such a no-brainer thing that everybody should be in favor of.
Well, it's because these are dishonest people. You
Wait,
can't
the
trust
people
them
that are
to
saying
spend
we
the money
need our
wisely.
bridges and roads to function well, or what
But
part of
that's
the people?
not. Infrastructure is not just bridges and roads. When you look into the nitty-gritty of what they're doing, it's not just bridges and roads. You know that.
Hey, who do you trust?
You can break apart the budgets, and you can see like.
Okay, one second. One at a time. It's IRI and Destiny. So we're gonna have Destiny talk to Hank first, then we'll have IRI, and then we're gonna go to Merrick.
Go IRI. You can go first.
I just want to know, hey, can you give me like 2 names of people in government that you trust? Who should we trust?
They've been ousted from government. Donald Trump and Steve King, Congressman Steve King of Iowa.
The Iowa guy.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure. Got it.
Honorable man.
That was the guy that said, that was the guy that talked about, what was it, Mexican babies or something? What?
Yeah, the Republicans kicked him off his committees.
Yeah, see, the Republicans are not representative of the American people. They're traitors to the American people, by and large.
It's you versus the world, huh?
Pretty much.
Okay.
You got it all figured out, huh, Hank?
Pretty much.
Okay, Destiny, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, wait, when you said earlier that the coronavirus was fake, what part of it was fake?
I didn't say the coronavirus was fake. I said that the phoniness over the shutdowns. I don't believe that the shutdowns were necessary, and a lot of quote-unquote experts agree with me that these shutdowns were not necessary.
Hey,
okay, wait. Why is it that when you're quoting the experts to help you, why would you say quote-unquote?
because I put common sense before experts.
You understand that common... Or sorry.
Hank, can I ask you a question? Since you just mentioned it. You don't believe that the shutdowns did anything to really help, or you're saying that there are experts who are in a large field who believe that, the shutdowns didn't help. Can you please explain to me what shutdowns we had in this country?
We had a lot of people, businesses forced to close around.
No, that's not a shutdown.
Yes, it is. It's a shutdown. The heck?
No, it's not.
Yes,
if those businesses are allowed to operate in any other way, whether it be online or not, it's still not a shutdown.
It is a shutdown. You're just changing the words. Shutdown. It's obviously a shutdown, and the shutdowns did a lot of harm. It's undeniable.
You're talking about Trump's 14 days.
Hank is right.
You're talking about Trump's 14 days to stop the spread, right?
Right. 14
Yeah,
days.
I
is not the
wasn't a
spread.
fan of that either.
Okay. I got it.
15
yeah.
days. 15 days is stop the spread.
Trump did a
15,
lot
yeah.
of bad things, it sounds like, according to you.
Yeah, he was. I mean, he had the whole government against him, and he had a lot of bad advice and whatever. But he
Okay,
was.
wait,
he had
okay,
the best
okay.
interests of America at heart.
I gotta ask you, okay? Because
Destiny,
Trump
it has
came
to be
in.
America's been waiting for a while, okay? Right after you're finished.
Yeah, Trump came in as a business deal making guy. That was his whole point. Okay. Now you might think that the Republicans have a different agenda than him or whatever, but he was a Republican president. The Republican lawmakers largely backed him, at least publicly. If he can't get a government to work for him when he owns every single corner of that government, what the fuck kind of worthless fuck businessman is he? How is he supposed to do anything?
Well, you well know that his own executive branch had a lot of people in it who were working against him. He can't just fire all the Obama
Actually,
holdovers and-
yeah, in the executive branch, he absolutely can, and he did. He did it with the FBI. He
don't
did it with
Not
the
career
DOJ.
bureaucrats.
I don't think that's
not
true,
career
man.
bureaucrats. You cannot. The president cannot unilaterally fire career bureaucrats. Can't happen.
Hold on, I'm sorry. Am I okay? IRA.
There's political appointees.
Can't for the head of the FDA, the head of the CDC, the head of the FBI, the head aren't these all political appointees that are done at the will, the behest of the executive branch of the president himself? Can he not remove or appoint
The
new
head,
people?
yeah.
So you can appoint the head that's one person, and then you've got like 200,000 people beneath him that actually do everything, that we're literally fighting tooth and nail and slow rolling everything. This is well known.
If you're the CEO of a business, do you think you can use that excuse when you're leading your company? I thought Trump was all about taking responsibility and the buck stops here. Even for my small business, if one of my employees were to do something that represents me in a bad light, I can't just run around and be like, oh, I didn't mean for that to happen, right? You have to take responsibility for what happens.
No, you should.
So why is Trump allowed to pass the buck here when he marketed himself as a businessman?
Trump's not passing the buck. I'm passing the buck for Trump. I haven't heard Trump really make these excuses.
No, but this is something that even leftists should be very, very concerned about, because what we found out during the Trump administration is that when the duly elected president, as a representative of the American people, wants to get something done and says to do something, and then the administrative state, the career bureaucrats, the people that are actually manning all of these agencies, when they stop them, that's undemocratic. You were so concerned about undemocratic stuff. Well, how about unelected bureaucrats slow rolling and stopping and rejecting and not implementing what the president or his political appointees say to do? That is undemocratic.
Thank you for explaining why you think Biden. Sorry, thank you for explaining why you think Biden can't get anything done. Thank you for explaining that.
See, why do you think Democratic means? Why do you think Democratic only means elected directly? That's not how our system works. Why do you keep saying that? Democratic doesn't mean that we personally vote on every single policy, on every single administrator, on every single bureaucrat. That's not how our system is set up. I don't think any Democratic
They're supposed to support the president.
Okay, wait. Okay, so Merrick still hasn't spoken, and if I don't let Merrick speak, then I'm gonna get canceled. So Merrick.
Just shut up, Dylan. I guess you said that infrastructure is a communist buzzword. So I guess this is kind of a two-parter. Do you think that social spending of any kind is communist? And can you define communism?
Communism is lies to control the people through hatred and spoiling them. And social spending generally.
Is that what Karl Marx wrote?
Don't interrupt. Don't interrupt.
Okay.
And generally, a lot of the social spending is not necessary, and it's harmful.
No, but is it communist? For any social spending, is that communist? Okay.
Generally.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I'm curious, do you guys believe that it's just a total waste of time to vote in any election? Is it just because it sounds like you always have an excuse for when it's funny because the only other people I hear cry about it this much are progressives. No offense to progressives, but it sounds like you guys always have an excuse for why you can't get anything done. There's either going to be a bureaucrat standing in your way, there's going to be some court standing in your way. Donald Trump was the president. You had both halves of Congress.
He got a lot done.
And
he got more than
got a lot done. They couldn't even repeal the fucking ACA, which was their main hatred point of Obama for 7 fucking years.
Actually, they did repeal the worst part about it, which was the individual mandate. That's gone.
The big call was, you can cope all you want, but the big call was repeal and replace. And all of us heard that gasp in the room when McCain said no for shooting down the fucking repeal and replace on that.
Right.
You can pretend like that was a victory.
There's your answer.
Okay?
So there's your
and
answer.
Also,
John McCain. It was John McCain.
Major legislative accomplishments. The only thing we really got under Trump were the tax cuts, which contributed to the very same debt and spending that you seem to hate so much. So how can you possibly say that Trump got a whole bunch of shit done? What?
He got rid of a lot of regulations.
Shit. We got rid of regulations.
Okay, Trump was helpful.
1.5 trillion added to the debt. 1.5 trillion from the 2017
Actually,
Tax
no,
Cuts and
actually,
Jobs Act.
that's
8
not true.
trillion added in the last 4 years under the Trump administration. Where were you complaining the last couple of years when they added $8 trillion
I've been
like
to our
almost
debt?
double, right?
I've
Holy
got
fuck.
videos.
One second.
I've got videos
okay,
on
one at a
YouTube from
time.
2016,
So, wait, one second,
2017.
One second. Okay, so we're gonna have lecture fan. We're gonna have Cam, then Hake, because I've heard all of them want to talk here. So I want to make sure they all get time to talk. And TJump hasn't talked in a while. Did you want to talk at some point?
Sure.
Okay, so lecture fan.
No, okay, so just so you guys know, I have been criticizing the spending and the deficits this entire time. So you guys keep saying, nobody criticized it during Trump. Yeah, lots of people did. And we've got videos to prove it from 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019. And the reason that Trump didn't have more legislative accomplishments is because Democrats controlled Congress and the House the second 2 years, and then Paul Ryan was the Speaker of the House, and they did get the tax cuts, which is major accomplishments. And then Trump actually, with what he could do with the executive power, he did way more in terms of foreign policy and cutting regulations and things like that than Biden has. Everything
what do you
Biden's done
define
gets thrown out.
success? What do you define as success for the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act? They're supposed to have like 6% GDP the next 2 years. It's still at 2%. What was the success?
Well, because did you realize that we had COVID and that impacted GDP? But
These are the 2 years before. I'm talking 2018, 2019. 2 years
Here's the
before the
success.
pandemic, buddy. Where is the success? Lecture.
Okay, the success is that people are paying less. 80% of Americans paid less in taxes, and if you actually look at the actual
Doesn't
tax
matter.
revenue,
It's
we
about
have more tax revenue. Hold on, let me
brother.
finish it.
GDP,
No,
brother.
It does
we gotta
matter.
let-
What individuals are actually paying in taxes actually does matter. I know you don't care about people and how much they have to pay in taxes, but it does matter. And 80% of Americans having more money in their pockets actually does matter. Maybe Democrats could actually do a little bit better in elections if they actually cared about people's pocketbook issues. And so that was a huge accomplishment. There's more federal tax revenues after the tax cuts than there were before. And studies have shown that if you actually look at tax revenues as a percentage of GDP, they've been very steady over time. What's not been steady over time is federal spending. All of our deficits and debt is due to out-of-control spending on welfare programs and entitlement programs. And that's a fact. And you guys want to keep pushing down this insane route. Good luck in 2022, boys.
What's the difference between giving people money back in terms of tax cuts versus giving people money back in terms of entitlements? Why are one of these so important and the other isn't?
There's a massive difference. Number one, when people work and earn their own money, that's their own money. Having to pay it to the government to then run it through administrative costs and then unequally and unfairly dole it out to special interest groups, that's not cool.
Okay, so I obviously have no authority here, but can we like talk about Biden, because like this whole Trump thing is like exhausting. We've heard all the arguments, we've gone over it time and time again. It's
into that, you're right.
I think it came from this general area down here, and it's really just a derail, and it gets everybody riled up, and then it turns into a Trump conversation.
Well, Cam, you
Yep,
are next
amen,
on the
brother.
list. So,
Amen.
Cam,
Democrats have nothing,
lecture
so they just want to trash
okay,
Trump.
Okay, so
TDS.
I want to.
Okay.
I don't know. I want to hear what other people.
Can people not hear me? Is my mic not working?
No, I'm sorry. That was my fault.
Okay, thank you. So Cam, you're next, so you can bring the conversation back to Biden if you want.
Okay, sure. So I guess I like listening to what people have to say and responding to it, I guess, more. So how about can we talk about like Afghanistan or something, or like his handling of the pandemic?
Let's do it.
Anybody, I don't care.
Whatever you want to talk about, Cam. I'm happy to chat with you, buddy.
Go ahead,
Afghanistan,
sure.
we're finally out. Amen,
Yeah.
brothers. Who's
Let's
happy?
get- yeah.
Okay.
We finally did it. Like
So,
20 years
what-
later.
So what you guys
First
think?
Veterans Day,
handling-
not in an active war in 20 years. Thank you,
You think-
Biden.
That's
You think the
disgusting that
handling
you
of
can
that
celebrate
situation
that.
was good? You think that
I think he did.
everyone thinks
I think
that?
he
was-
knew-
Terrible.
I think
It
that we
definitely-
I think that sometimes we look at things like a movie where we want there to be like some ideal solution where there's absolutely no downsides. I don't think there was ever no downsides to that. I guess just for like, let me just rattle off like for 10 seconds. There's so many stupid talking words come out. So for all of the people that are like, oh, well, we should have slowly drawn down troops or whatever, that wasn't an option because it's obviously undermining the presence of the ANI there. It's obviously making it look like we have a vote of no confidence in the country. We can't slowly start visaing and taking every single important asset out of the country. That's a stupid suggestion. It undermines everything we've done there. We can't do that. Number one. Number two, the idea that we left military equipment there for the people, for the Taliban to take over when we left, that's also not true. We sabotaged a lot of that equipment on the way out, and we weren't just going to leave and pull out every single piece of military equipment that we had there also because, again, it undermines the ANI, and as soon as we leave and then the Taliban rolls through in 3 days, everybody's going to be looking at the U.S. like, oh my God, why'd you take out your military equipment? That was so horrible. You destroyed their ability to fight back, right? yeah, 3. Were there some Americans left behind? Sure, there were. I want to say now the number is less than 100. Obviously, there are going to be people scattered throughout, people that can't get out. There's never going to be like a perfect 100%, like we're out, there's no blood on our hands, everything is fine. But in terms of respecting the agreement that we already had in place from the Doha talks, I think, that we already had in place with the Taliban to be out of the country by a certain point in time, to make sure that no more American lives were lost in terms of aggression by the Taliban themselves, which even the Taliban understood, and to make sure that we weren't stuck in a protracted conflict that lasted another 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 years, because we don't have the perfect opportunity to withdraw. I think it's not only cool that we actually got out, but it's cool that Biden was willing to take the small PR hit to finally remove us from that conflict, knowing that there was going to be a little bit of smudge on his face while he left.
Trump would have handled it better.
Okay, give me a second. Okay, Hake was the next one to speak, so I want to give it over to him.
Trump would have handled the Afghanistan withdrawal better. I think we all know this. Republicans have not liked this spending stuff. Even since George W. Bush, they didn't even like the Republican voters I'm talking about, like the Tea Party. Obama was spending like crazy, which gave birth to the Tea Party, but they were not fans of Republicans spending like crazy.
I thought we were talking about Biden here.
I know, but I'm leading up. You criticized Republicans as though they only get mad when Democrats are spending and not when Republicans are spending. Trump had to spend more in response to Obama drawing down the military. He decimated the military, so he had to build up the military. So we cut him some slack on the spending. But Biden is not spending on good stuff. He spent like $130 billion or something to supposedly open up the schools. And a lot of that is being spent on the critical race theory nonsense. So it's corrupt.
All right, so let's talk about the Doha agreement.
Then after Cam, I almost called him J-Trump. J-Jump. No, T-Jump. After him.
So Destiny said that we had to respect the Doha agreement, which sure, I agree. We did have to respect the Doha agreement. But there's two parts to that story, right? It wasn't just us that had to respect it. It was also the Taliban for that plan to be followed through, right? If we're talking about the same Doha agreement between the U.S. government and the Taliban.
The Taliban's part of that.
Yeah, what was their end of the deal there, Cam? Do you remember?
Yeah, I do actually. Here, I could pull up the whole agreement, but
there was this huge important part of that deal.
No, hold up. I mean, you asked me a question. Can I answer?
Go for it.
Okay, so first, let me see. Part 1 was what? So there'd be part 4. I remember that one off the top of my head was obviously the intra-Afghan negotiations, which I think also took place in Doha. There would be the Taliban also. Part 1 was that they couldn't, and I'm just listing them as I remember, the Taliban couldn't use Afghan soil to host enemies of the U.S., right? Like Al-Qaeda, ISIS-K. There was, I forget what the two in the middle were.
That was the big one. That was the huge one.
What was the one in the middle? What was the number 2?
The one that you mentioned about them not using Afghanistan soil to host groups that are hostile to the United States.
Right.
That was the big one. Yeah.
Okay.
Remember what the punishment was if they didn't go through with this stuff? Do you remember that?
What was it? What was the
nothing.
punishment?
It was jack squat. That's what it was.
Right. But the entire
great deal.
The entire agreement, the entire drawdown of forces was contingent on the Taliban holding up to this deal. Literally,
and they didn't.
And they didn't. Exactly. And
there was no punitive measures. And we counted on a 300,000 strong.
Wait, listen. Under the Trump administration, largely, and I know, I'm sorry, I'm calling back the Trump administration, but I mean, I could pull up graphs. Obviously, you're not going to be able to see them. I could send them in chat, I guess. The violence on all sides was extremely low, right? Because one of the de facto parts of this agreement was that all violence on all sides would drop by 80%, right? This was vocalized by the Taliban.
Committed the violence against our soldiers at the airport? Who do you think committed the violence against our soldiers?
It was the Taliban? No, I don't think that it was.
It wasn't Taliban.
You're just straw manning me, just like you did with everybody else.
What violence are you talking about? What violence happened when Biden took over?
Well, for one, the Taliban started attacking towns and gaining massive ground, obviously breaking the agreement. When I say violence on all sides, I'm talking about Taliban violence against coalition forces, Taliban violence against the Afghan security force, Afghan violence against the Taliban, violence, military violence of any kind. It was very, very, very low until Biden took over, and the Taliban apparently got it in their head that they now had the green light to start taking as much land as they possibly could. And in a very short period of time, they took 70% of the country. Biden pulled everybody out, didn't have any evacuation plan whatsoever. In Destiny, sure, we did sabotage a lot of the equipment, sure. But the Taliban undeniably did use our Humvees, our guns, and a bunch of other equipment. And our military drones to take territory. Like there's literally videos and pictures of them driving around in our Humvees and using the 50 cals on top to take villages and to take territory. It's undeniable. Sure, it's good that we sabotage some of it, but
yeah, there wasn't a deal. My understanding is it wasn't a deal that the Taliban were going to split the country with the ANI and just leave, or that they were going to like leave everything up.
That was a hope. That was a hope, but it wasn't particularly in the agreement.
Like, so
yeah, no, right. You're right.
What was the alternative then? Do we just stay forever? This is the problem that we get into.
No,
Trump
we
had us going out, and it would have gone smoother.
A good start would be an evacuation plan for, at the bare minimum, U.S. citizens in Afghanistan. As the Taliban are rapidly gaining ground, a good evacuation plan to get our people out before they just start slaughtering people, which they did, by the way, with our biometric databases. They went door to door testing people's irises to see if they were U.S. citizens or U.S. allies, and then literally hanging them or beheading them because we left our databases there. Or the devices that had the database.
How many American citizens were slaughtered by the Taliban when we left?
I don't have an exact number. I mean, are you contesting that U.S. citizens were killed by the Taliban after we left?
I know that there were people that worked with the U.S. that were killed. I don't remember there being a wholesale slaughter of American citizens.
Okay,
I didn't say a wholesale slaughter.
There was at least two. There was at least two really good alternatives in Afghanistan, other than the complete and utter disaster, one of the greatest American foreign policy disasters in a generation that was the Afghanistan pullout. But really, Afghanistan is just one of a whole other symptoms of the weak foreign policy. And Biden is so incredibly weak. His foreign policy is so horrible. You've got Russia on the move. You've got China on the move. Both Russia and China are our two main adversaries, both getting super aggressive with Ukraine and Taiwan. And it's a very dangerous situation because Biden is weak, and that's what happened. So there was two different alternatives in Afghanistan. Number one is you leave about 2,000 American troops there in a non-combat role, and you continue to provide air support, and you could have prevented this disaster where the Taliban are now taking over and killing women and raping kids and all this horrible stuff that you guys don't seem to care about.
No,
the second alternative was to actually when the Taliban broke the agreement and started doing all these horrible things, you then say, okay, we're not withdrawing. We're going to keep 2,000 troops here, and we're going to bomb you guys until you do it. And then they say, okay, fine, we won't do that. And if Trump had been there and Trump was strong, like he always had been on foreign policy, then the Taliban wouldn't have done that. We could have withdrawn, and the government wouldn't have fallen like that. The whole reason they were so surprised by the government falling is because it wouldn't have fallen if Trump was president, but with Biden president, it was because he's weak and he sucks, and Democrat foreign policy always sucks, and it makes the world more dangerous, and now Americans are in a more dangerous situation, and we're much more likely to get hit by a terrorist attack, and Russia and China are much more likely to get aggressive and invade their enemies, and this is all from Biden's weak foreign policy.
I would actually disagree with Lecture Fan. I would say instead of leaving 2,000 troops in Afghanistan to deal with the situation, I would say that we should have scaled up forces until we could devise an evacuation plan, which is actually what Biden had to do after, not until after he allowed the Taliban to completely overrun the country and doom a lot of the people that were there.
I thought you guys were against unnecessary wars.
Yeah, okay. There was no door-to-door slaughter of U.S. citizens. I'm trying to find this. I don't even think I need to look for this because if this would have happened, we would have been hearing it on the news.
They were going door to door.
The news would never report that. The news would never
going door to door.
AP or Reuters they might have went door to door, and they might have killed people that were working with the U.S.
Al Jazeera would have reported it.
Yeah, Al Jazeera would have reported it from any country.
They were looking for anyone who was a U.S. citizen or an ally of the United States, and they were slaughtering people.
This didn't happen. Number one. Number two. Okay, any citizen that wanted out has had the opportunity to via the State Department. Okay, those are
not true.
That's a Biden talking point.
That is my understanding.
Destiny, that is not true.
I think there were like less than 100 American citizens that were still left in Afghanistan.
There's literally civilian like ops groups going into Afghanistan still and rescuing people that didn't get out when they wanted to. This isn't something that's hosted by the federal government. These are civilians that are literally most of them are former military going into Afghanistan and rescuing people that didn't get out when they wanted to because they got stranded by the Biden administration.
Okay, I'll go look for those stories. It wouldn't surprise me if there were like a dozen, but like I like the State Department was issuing evac orders like months before the official evacuation started. Like this was something that the administration knew was going to do. This timeline had been set out by President Trump prior to this for leaving the country. And the idea that like we were gonna like increase troops there, the only reason why there was so little violence in us up to us leaving that country is because the Taliban and us had an understanding that we were going to depart. Right? We were going to leave. The idea that we should start drawing troops up there again instead of drawing them down, and the idea that the Taliban wouldn't have responded, like the Taliban gets a ton of support from Pakistan. They're going to have arms. They're not people fighting in caves. We're going to start losing soldiers again. You know what happens? It only takes 1 or 2 bad fucking attacks. Oh my God, 100 U.S. soldiers killed and blah, blah, blah. Bam, we've got 20,000 troops again in the Middle East, and we're right back at fucking ground zero once again in fucking Afghanistan for another 2 decades. Why do we do that? And then in terms of like, and I'm only saying this because either you or somebody else brought it up that Trump could have done it better, or Trump would have done it better. Motherfucker, Trump left over 100,000 motherfucking Syrians on the Syrian-Turkish border to let our own fucking allies slaughter. The idea that Trump would have more responsibly moved us out of here when Trump was a coward and he moved that Doha deadline to leaving that country until after he was out of office, and he did that very intentionally, just like he tried to do with some of his tax cuts, where he was going to cut the Social Security payroll taxes, and then he was going to reinstate them during the next administration, so that if he wasn't elected again, a Democrat would have to be the one to do it. This absolutely could have been done under Trump if he wanted to, but he didn't do it. He chose not to do it. He extended those deadlines into the next administration, and Biden still came through, and it was still a better situation than what we left the Kurdish people at between Turkey and Syria. So I don't understand this idea of how Trump could have done it better, or Biden did a horrible job, and there was no mass slaughter of U.S. citizens from door to door to door. We all would have been hearing about this on the news, or Al Jazeera, or Russia, or China were reporting it.
Russia Today, like, yeah.
It was on the news. Okay. Anyway, I think you're misrepresenting my argument a little bit. I don't think you're doing it intentionally. First of all, I didn't say anything about Trump doing it better. I haven't said that. Now, when we talk about like scaling up forces, right? I'm not saying that we should scale up forces and leave them there. I'm saying that we should have scaled up forces and devised an evacuation plan. If you're criticizing the idea of scaling up forces, you're also criticizing Joe Biden, the guy that you're defending, because that's ultimately what he did just before we fully withdrew. He scaled up forces, but he did it too late before he devised an evacuation plan, and we ended up getting stranded at the airport, which ended up being a slaughter. It was a slaughter. Was like 200 Afghan citizens died and 13 U.S. service members, Marines, and naval members, right? So, like, yeah, we should have scaled up forces, but we should have done it a lot sooner. When the Taliban started rapidly taking ground, we should have dealt with the situation, devised an evacuation plan, and got everybody out. I'm not saying that we should not have pulled out of Afghanistan. I'm saying that we should have done it way better. This was terrible, and I'm not saying that Trump could have done a better job. I'm not saying that. I'm saying what Biden did was shit. And it was.
Yeah, you want more troops in foreign countries, and Trump would have done it better. We get it. What else? What other problems you got?
You're
with
literally
Biden,
just
Steven?
commenting.
What about 40 judges appointed in his first year?
Just scumbag.
Wait. Okay. So let's not yell.
Hey, no name calling.
Okay, I'm gonna
Let me just
TJump has been waiting the whole. He hasn't said anything the whole time.
okay. All right.
Okay. TJump.
Yeah, sure. On mute. I mean, yeah, I think that the bigger problem is that even though I agree that Biden did many of the things Destiny said, I don't think they're that spectacular. I think that's like the bare minimum of what you would expect from like a competent politician, which we don't usually have in this country. So, I mean, I'm not impressed by any of this. I want politicians actually going to make a difference and make things better for people, not just do the very bare minimum, which is pretty garbage. So, I mean, I don't know, like all this debate is over, oh, look, he did some very moderate crap and then did some other more bad crap. Oh, good. This is not like a good comparison. You're trying to establish that Biden did a good job. He just did a less shitty job than the previous guy, which wasn't really a high bar. And a lot of the things Destiny mentioned are impacts that happened because of policies that were implemented 10 years ago. So it doesn't necessarily have to do with any of Biden's policies. These are things that have been in the works for a long time, and economic changes that have been in the works for a long time, like trying to get over the supply chain blockages for the wood because of the shipping things that had nothing to do with Biden. Pretty much, that was just a time thing. So it's really not most of the things that Destiny mentioned Biden did really didn't have anything to do with Biden. And I don't really know like anything else that's been listed that shows he's done a good job. It's just, oh look, a mediocre politician doing mediocre politician shit, exactly like pretty much everything has happened. I mean, and comparing him to Trump was garbage. Of course he looks better than Trump. Everybody's better than Trump. So again, I'm not really seeing how this is any relevant to the actual topic of the conversation.
Who do you think would be a good president, TJ?
Me, I would be a good president. That's the only answer.
Just as a record, the State Department says that right now there are fewer than a dozen U.S. citizens who want to leave Afghanistan, are prepared to depart, and have the necessary travel documents. The idea that there are like hundreds or however many, I don't know.
You said there was none. You said there was none, Destiny.
I don't
There's
think I said there
no-
was none. I think I said
I don't
over and
think
over
Destiny
again that
said
there's
that.
probably like less than 100 or a couple dozen. I think I said
Yeah.
that over and over again.
I think that's what he said. IRI, I'm sorry that I called you a scumbag. I really just meant that you were being sleazy. I shouldn't have used a name and directed it at you, so I'm sorry.
Can I just
good,
point
I
out?
still love
Can
you.
I just point out the fact that the United States has had troops
Wait,
in
IRI?
Korea?
You're a scumbag. Okay, continue.
Okay, no, the
Whoa.
United States has had troops in Korea, Japan, Germany for over 70 years. The United States has troops in over 90 countries, and Afghanistan was important to prevent the Taliban taking over so that they could not be used as a base of operations to commit a terrorist attack against the United States. Second of all, it was very useful to have Bagram Air Force Base to be able to conduct intelligence in Central Asia, including Iran, right next door. And so the idea that it's just so outlandish for the United States to have a couple thousand non-combat troops and non-combat roles in a country when we have such significant national security issues at play is just absolutely preposterous. And it's all just because it's so cliche and it's so cool. Oh, forever wars, Middle East. It's like, dude, we've had troops in countries for 70 years. We have troops in over 90. We have 90 countries worldwide where we've got troops and bases. We've got significant national security interests in Afghanistan. They could be plotting terrorist attacks right there. We've totally lost eyes and ears in Iran and other parts of Asia because of this absolute disaster.
Lecture. I think you've been playing a little too much Age of Empires 4, man. A little too much armchair general here. Come on, man. This is real stuff, dude.
That's not an
real
argument.
stuff.
That's not an argument.
Okay, wait. So
That's
here, I
literally not
want.
an argument.
Are you going to criticize then? Are you going to say I condemn Trump for the Doha talks? Can you say that you condemn Trump for giving us that timeline?
Dude, Trump said he wanted to get Afghanistan for 4 years. You know what he didn't do in those 4 years? He didn't get out of Afghanistan. It's one
Lecture
thing to
fan.
say,
I'm going to
Afghanistan.
Dylan, you're going to have to mute me because I'm going to ask this question over and over again until he answers. Are you going to criticize Trump for the Doha talks, for those agreements?
Wait,
Why?
Destiny, were those those talks that Trump wanted to bring the Taliban to Camp David on the anniversary of 9/11? Was it the same group of guys?
Jesus, that's pretty fucking horrible.
That sounds
Wait,
terrible.
didn't Trump as part
That
of
was
those
one of
agreements?
Trump's
Wait,
ideas.
hold on. I didn't read anything about these. All right, didn't he agree to release like some 5,000 fucking ISIS and Taliban prisoners or whatever in exchange for those talks? Did he do that?
No, that's not true.
Yeah.
No,
Really?
Trump, no, it was
Wasn't there a
prisoner
big prisoner? Wasn't there a big
exchange.
prisoner?
No.
exchange
Thousand
or whatever?
hardened criminals, I recall.
It wasn't just, we're going to release them for
But
the
it was a prisoner exchange of some ISIS and Taliban prisoners, wasn't it?
Oh yeah.
between the Afghan government and the Taliban. It had nothing to do with Trump.
Wait, but wasn't that part of the Doha agreement?
There's two. Okay, so the intra-Afghan talks also happened in Doha. So did the agreement between Trump and the Taliban. They're two completely different things. The intra-Afghan talks between the Taliban and the Afghan government were a contingency of the agreement between Trump and the Taliban. That if they agreed to this, the Taliban would have to talk to the Afghan government in Doha.
So, I mean, the Afghan government that only exists essentially at the behest of the U.S. presence there, right? It's kind of silly to say that these two things were totally independent of one another, no? I mean, I'm pretty sure there's a high level of coordination going on between the Afghan government and the United States government when it comes to organizing these talks, no?
Sure.
Okay.
I mean, you could argue that, but it's what the Afghan government wanted. They wanted their people back from the Taliban, and that's what happened. There was a prisoner exchange. It wasn't just this one-sided thing where, we're going to release all the prisoners because Trump made a deal with the Taliban. That's not what happened.
Sure, but it was contingent on the Doha talks that the Afghan government wasn't even privy to, right? I have to look this up. I thought that prisoner exchange was part of the actual Doha agreement itself.
The Afghan government wasn't privy to the agreement between Trump and the Taliban, but the whole Trump agreement with the Taliban was predicated on the idea that the Taliban would go talk to the Afghan government because they didn't want to. So Trump said, we'll draw down forces, we'll do all this other stuff, and you'll do this stuff, but you have to go talk to the Afghan government and come to some kind of compromise. And yeah, that's where the prisoner exchange happened, was in the intra-Afghan talks.
Okay,
And
but part of the
for releasing
provision
to do this.
Sure, okay. These talks seem relatively contingent on one another, right? Without the withdrawal of all the troops, the intra-Afghan negotiation, it's not like a huge point to this. I'm just saying that there was a prisoner exchange, and it was pretty contingent on the U.S. agreements made during the Doha, right?
Sure.
Do you condemn Trump for the guidelines that he had listed out during the Doha talks? Lecture fan.
Oh, okay.
No.
Why not?
Why are you asking?
Why don't you condemn Trump for trying to make us
because
leave
guess what?
Afghanistan?
Because guess what? Trump didn't do. He didn't fuck up Afghanistan like Biden did. He didn't withdraw when there was a disaster unfolding. He didn't give up all of our national security interests. He didn't show complete and total weakness. Look,
Wait, hold on. Wait, you're just rambling.
Barack Obama totally lost all of the gains we had.
Why are we
in Iraq.
talking about Obama? How many presidents back do we think go?
We're talking about Middle East foreign policy and Central Asia foreign policy, and I'm showing there's an example of this.
Okay, let's look at the example of our Kurdish allies in Syria on the Syrian-Turkey border. What about Trump abandoning?
Wait. Okay, lecture fan, you go first, and then we'll have Destiny respond afterwards.
Destiny just loves talking over me and interrupting me, I guess. The point I'm making about it's amazingly the similarities between Afghanistan and Iraq are similar, because in both situations you had Republican presidents that had created situations where American interests were being protected, and there was security, and there was not a lot of violence, and there was stability going on. And then in Iraq, Obama comes in and, for cliche, just to be cool, partisan sort of political reasons, withdraws from Iraq and gives up everything. Joe Biden, for the same reasons, for literally just to be cool and I'm hip, let's get cliche, let's end the fear over. Literally, not a lot of thinking going on, just trying to be cliche and hip and cool. Totally destroys it in almost the exact same way, and totally gives up all the gains that Republican presidents had made.
Okay, so why wouldn't you compare this to something more recent, like Trump abandoning our allies, the Kurdish people?
Nice whataboutism. Nice whataboutism.
He can't be real. This can't be a real guy. He breaks. I see you sometimes, lecture fan. I see you breaking sometimes. I know you are, motherfucker. I'm not getting.
I'm not, dude.
I'm moving past it. I'm not getting sucked into the lecture fan.
We get it. We won.
I know that he's fucking trolling. I know he's fucking trolling me.
You know who's trolling is you, saying that you're hyped about Biden. That was the biggest troll I've ever heard in my life.
We won on that point. We can move on to the next one. It's okay. What about the 40 judges that Biden got confirmed in his first year? Can we talk about that? That's a fun one.
No, before you go to that, we know that we were respected around the world under Trump. Trump had the respect of the people, the globalist foreign leaders. He had them on their toes, and he was able to work with the tough ones too. He got along with the tough ones, which is better than us, where we have with Biden. We have Biden, who's like barely there, and Kamala Harris also commands no respect. And we have SJW Secretary of State Antony Blinken getting clowned because he's talking about fake human rights, when we have fake civil rights drama here in America, and we're getting clowned. We're not respected around the world anymore, thanks to Biden.
I mean, like when we got laughed at the UN when Trump made his speech.
They could laugh, but they had to respect him. They had no choice.
Even if you want to argue that
people,
Trump,
laughing is irrelevant.
Wait,
laughing means respect.
Laughing is irrelevant.
Okay,
I respect you so much.
Okay, please. Okay, give me a second. Okay, Hake said something and Ira was responding. I wanted that interaction to finish before anybody else jumps in. What were you saying, Ira?
Well, I just recall when Donald Trump made a speech that he thought was serious, and the UN General Assembly was laughing, and I thought, I'm pretty sure he said, didn't know that was funny or something like that. But I guess that's your definition of respect, people laughing in your face.
The UN are not respectable people. They're enemies.
Every other country in the fucking world. Who the fuck respected us then? If not any of the
what dimension are you from?
They did respect.
What dimension are you from, Hank?
They had to cave to what he wanted in many ways.
Nobody caved.
Okay.
What are you who caved? What the fuck what are we talking about? We got no provisions from concessions from North Korea during those infamous talks. Even I think Pence, was on record, or not on record, but behind the scenes was complaining about how fucked we were, or it might have been Tiller, Rex Tiller was the State Department guy was complaining about it. We got nothing from them. China back and forth fucking tariffs were a fucking disaster. We didn't really accomplish anything there. We didn't bring them to the table on anything. Well, like, where are all these concessions? Where are the people that respect us? Russia didn't give up fucking Crimea. I think they still have a presence in fucking Tillerson. Still have a presence in Georgia. What happened? Where's the respect?
We don't care about.
You can't seriously, in good faith, argue that Joe Biden commands as much or more respect than Donald Trump, even if you want to say that Donald.
Yes, you can, because if you talk about the Mexico-American agreement.
Let me finish.
Okay.
Joe Biden literally cannot form an English sentence. He goes to climate summits and actually falls asleep. And this isn't like, okay, he met with the president of Israel and everybody said he falls asleep. Bullshit. It wasn't real. Whatever. He literally fell asleep while world leaders were speaking at the climate summit. You think that commands respect?
It's actually a TikTok
literally
bullshit
texting him up,
rumor.
and an aide had to come wake him up.
Yo. That's not a lie.
Okay.
These are boring. I'd fall asleep too.
He can't speak. He literally can't
Hold
talk.
on, was this the
Called it
picture?
the most important
wait,
world
okay.
event.
This is the picture of him
Stop
sitting
for a
like this.
second.
You think he was sleeping like this, like a fucking
No,
alligator?
He was like this. He was like-
Steven, Dylan is trying to talk.
Okay. Thank you for the backup moderation. Okay, so we're gonna go to Shift
Was there-
because he's been waiting for so long. Okay, and I'll let you guys Google away and figure it out in the meantime. Okay, Shift.
Yo, first of all, y'all talking a lot, and it's like you're missing the forest for the trees when it comes to the Afghanistan pullout. Like you really, there is no better way to have done it. I'm gonna be honest with you. You're talking about executing a plan with a clear goal and date, and then executing that plan. And I'm not going to say it like I'm going to say it this way because I hope nobody takes it this way. But like, I don't care if it was a fucking disaster and like we just lost everything. Like somebody opened their mouths in the government and did what they said they were going to do. Like at some point, like we can get into the specifics of how that withdrawal plan failed. But like we have somebody who opened their mouths and said, every president before me said, we're not going to go to war. We're not going to do this. We're not going to do that. Biden, for all his old age and dementia, falling asleep, said he was going to do something and did it. Like, what do you want him to do? Should he have not done it? You said he could have done it better. He could have not done it at all. And now we're at a point where it's like, okay, so this man at least keeps his word when it comes to these high-scale political hits that he could take. If we're talking about if Biden's good or not in his first term, we want him to do more, but he's doing what he said he was going to do. Like, we're arguing over how good these plans are, but I got more food stamps. Like, he said he was boosting up that program. Like, that happened. We cut child poverty in half. We're giving people money to exist. That was the whole, the liberal plot. It's all going to come crashing down. Prices are going back down. People are making billions. We're seeing record highs in companies. Like, you're arguing over the semantics of whether or not the things that we do are good or not, but they're getting done. The fact is that your former guy and most Republican people in general will say one thing and then do a whole other, and you still praise them for like some ungodly reason when all the logic of what they do is to the same thing that you said the Democrats want with illegal immigrants, a CRT teaching about terrible American value. Like you just talk and you you act like people are numbers, yo. Like you act like people don't exist on this fucking planet. I don't know what, like, just like Biden sucks as like the hype guy. I wish we had somebody older. He fell asleep at a meeting. That shit is boring. Like I would fall asleep at that if I was fucking president. Like, what do you want a guy to do if we're comparing Biden's record and saying, is he good? Is this worth like our time and attention on Democrat? Hell, like, no. Like, there's so much more that could be done. There's so much easier, like, whatever. But the man is doing what he said he was going to do, whether we hate it or we love it. Like, that's it.
Okay.
Okay, I can't help but. Oh, sorry, Dylan.
We're gonna go. Okay, Destiny, did you find anything on this, or anybody? Did anybody find anything on him sleeping?
I looked it up, and there was a second time, and it looks like he did indeed doze off.
There's a photo.
I will take
of him
him.
closing his eyes.
I will say though, I'll take him dozing off over Trump telling us to drink bleach, or that invisible Jeff
Come on, Destiny.
Or
Come on.
Ivanka sitting in for him.
You can't say that
Ivanka
without
sat in for
laughing.
He also
better. He didn't even go to the climate stupid thing.
Okay.
Okay,
He did not crap his pants
To me?
lecture. Come on, that's so
yeah,
ridiculous.
and he craps his pants.
You guys are so ridiculous with that talking point.
I will. No, I do want to push though on any of the Republicans here. Who the fuck do you think respected us more under Trump? Because what the fuck? Like literally every ally shat on us. I don't think any enemies took us seriously. I mean, Kim was happy to get a picture, but like, where the fuck is all this respect under Trump?
What are
Okay,
you talking
I just
about?
wanna
Trump
say-
had major successes on foreign policy, particularly in the Middle East.
Like
I
what?
want to
He moved
address what.
he moved the embassy
Yeah,
from Tel
and
Aviv
that's
to
what his
Jerusalem, which everybody was universally banned by all of our allies.
Stop.
Exactly, and then-
wait, stop. I said stop. I can't hear myself think. So Destiny, say what you were saying, and then we'll have lecture friend respond. Okay.
The Middle Eastern successes. He bombed Syria again. He bombed an airport in Syria. He moved the embassy east to Jerusalem, which I think was universally panned by every single ally we have. I think everybody criticizes this for, except for there was like one other country that might have moved, like Kuwait or so, I don't remember. What are all these Middle East major successes?
All right. So first of all, Democrats always said that if we moved our embassy in Jerusalem, that would cause all this war and stuff. That turned out to be false. So why should we listen to you now? Second of all, after he moved the embassy to Jerusalem, I don't know if you know this, but there was actually a peace agreement and normalization of relationships between Israel and the UAE and Arab countries. He literally created peace in the Middle East. Oh, what successes? What peace in the Middle East? Ever heard of it?
If we
And
want
I
to talk
think
about stuff that every president said they were going to do. Yeah, I was just going to say that. Another thing that every president said they were going to do is move the embassy to Jerusalem, and none of them did it. But I want to talk about something Paradigm said. So I don't know if you noticed this while you were speaking, but you literally said that the withdrawal couldn't have been, there was no better way to do it, and also called it a failure in the same sentence. Did you realize that?
And I explained that. There's no way you heard me talk that long and didn't hear me explain that literal rationale for you in the very next sentence. I don't know why you're hearing me talk and you're not like I don't know if it's going in one ear and out the other, but like I said, the explanation for that. It couldn't have been done better because we weren't ever planning to do it, but it was also a failure in the way it was executed. That makes perfect sense.
Okay.
And I think we had a peace.
You're doing the same thing you did earlier. You're saying you're wrong, no citation, no articulation, nothing. You're wrong. It absolutely could have been done better. I listed one. I said one way that it could have been done better. Nobody contested it, and Lecture Fan also gave 2 ways that he thought it could have been done better, and nobody. Destiny might have contested it. I don't remember, but I don't think there was a lot of contention there.
I did.
We literally could have scaled up forces before we withdrew, which actually happened, but it was too late, devised an evacuation plan, got our citizens at the very least out of the country prior to allowing the Taliban to completely take over, and then maybe some of our allies, or hopefully some of our allies. But of course, that didn't happen, and we got a whole clusterfuck at the, am I allowed to say that? I'm sorry. At the airport there in Kabul.
So a surge. You want another surge. Like, just say that.
What?
Like, just say that.
What? Another surge? What?
Yeah,
What?
you're explaining a surge. Like, you want
When we send
a
another
surge.
10,000
That's
troops.
what Biden did too.
Afghanistan.
Yeah, Biden sent an additional 5,000 troops. Am I wrong? Was it 5,000? I believe it was 5,000. But it was after he had completely screwed the situation, when he could have brought those troops earlier. And I'm not saying left them in Afghanistan. I'm saying as the Taliban started to rapidly gain ground and territory, it was literally like in a month they went from controlling 15% of the country to 75% just before they seized Kabul, right? We could have drawn up troops, devised an evacuation plan, gotten our people out, and then withdrew. And
Why
Oh,
do we
again,
we
that
have
goes
no
to the
eva-
point
wait, wait,
Destiny
why do we keep
said.
saying,
Sorry.
Why do we keep saying we had no evacuation plan? We
did.
We announced this I think in April. The State Department started to say non-essential personnel could leave. Like we had plans for getting people out. It's not like they got a fucking like a DM one day like fly away, lol, like good luck, like.
No, dude, literally as the Taliban were seizing Kabul, American citizens were like told to shelter in place and not leave and not go to the airport to evacuate, right? Like, but if you're told, yeah, you should evacuate, but you don't have any way to evacuate, does that sound like an evacuation plan?
Okay, here's
Sure,
like a
you can
genuine
leave,
question.
but we're not going to buy you a taxi.
Here's a genuine question: Was there a single American killed by the Taliban over the entire withdrawal?
I think so. I think a
I
couple of them.
don't have a source for you on hand.
That's
but
pretty important, right? Like, I feel like
Okay.
if there was, we would have heard about it, right? Isn't this a pretty,
All right.
like, the idea that this was so botched, I just don't think this is true. I think there was a plan. I think we got really graphic footage of people trying to escape.
I
from the
mean,
plane,
13
and
of
it
them
sucked.
killed at the airport. I mean,
Not by
there's
the
13
Taliban.
there. Okay, you're right. Not by the Taliban. Here,
Yeah,
But
that's
there's
such a
but there's
good
probably
the source, real
there's probably a reason why. Like the Taliban doesn't want to fuck with Americans in Afghanistan. They want Americans to leave more than we do. Like they don't fucking want us there. They're not going to start murdering Americans indiscriminately because that's the only way the political pressure comes back in the U.S. to send another 100,000 troops to Afghanistan to start fucking up the Taliban again. I don't think they want that type of long-term conflict with the U.S.
Okay,
Okay,
so
let
we're
me
gonna
respond to that.
Give me a second. We're gonna have Lecture Fan and like this one last interaction. We have to wrap up because we still have one more topic to go.
Okay. Destiny seems obsessed with this talking point that ISIS and the Taliban and Al Qaeda and the Taliban are completely different. They're totally different. You can't complain. That is totally false, and we know that because literally one of the top ISIS leaders is literally one of the main leaders in the Taliban too. They work together. They're not these completely. They're completely separate. That is totally false. And then Biden literally said, "There's never going to be a moment where you see a helicopter taken off from the roof of the embassy." And then guess what we saw? Literally helicopters taking off from the roof of the embassy. But this whole notion that like ISIS and the Taliban are not working together and not in the cahoots, like literally one of the Haqqani network is actually it's the Haqqani network. It's literally one of the Haqqani network leaders is literally one of the most top officials in the Taliban. So this whole talking point that they're totally different is just completely false. That's something that CNN says that's just wrong.
I heard
I
Obama
think-
was the
I think
leader of
it-
both, actually. Sorry.
And Paradigm, you said no better way. I think like a good start to like having that withdrawal be better is like making sure that we have the intelligence that terrorists are actually in a building before we drop a missile on it that ends up killing 7 children. Like I think that's like a pretty good place to start because that drone strike that allegedly was going to kill suicide bombers that were planning to go to the airport literally killed 10 civilians, parents, and then 7 children under the age of 10 years old. And they insisted for months that it was just a bunch of terrorists.
Yep, and not a word from these leftists about it.
And you know the rules were changed.
Everybody was criticizing fucking Biden about that. What are you talking about?
You know the
Yeah,
rules
I did
for
see leftists
engagement were
criticizing him,
changed.
but
The
Under
rules for
Trump.
engagement. The rules for engagement were changed under Trump for lower commanders to be able to call those strikes. So it's kind of interesting how that all worked out.
But was it not
Weird.
authorized by General McKenzie? It was authorized by Biden, but I'm pretty sure it was ordered by McKenzie. He literally took full credit for it in the Pentagon press
It was a
brief.
mistake of an attack for sure, but there have been a ton of civilians killed under Trump as well. Not to whataboutism. It was a bad thing. I don't know what this has to do with like the pull out of Afghanistan.
It has to do with Americans were killed during the pull out of Afghanistan and in one of the most horrific attacks on American military members, and you guys are acting like it was a huge success. That's the issue.
Only rivaled by the horrendous attack in Benghazi and on Hillary Clinton's email server, I guess.
True.
Okay.
True.
The trolling.
So
I
now-
guess you troll when you got nothing.
Okay, so we're wrapping up. We're gonna have ending statements. Try to keep them under 30 seconds before we go on to the last topic, which should be shorter. And we're gonna start with Cam.
Yeah, sure. So I think the first year has been a dumpster fire. I think the Afghan withdrawal was terrible. I don't like the census thing that I mentioned earlier. It's like I said, a 3/5 compromise tactic. I don't like the basically like abandoning border states and towns amid the border crisis, and also not going ham on the border crisis, while also like locking. I guess this is also like not just Biden, but other like local leaders, but going ham on the border or not going ham on the border, but then being pissy about Americans and what they're doing in their personal lives during the pandemic. And I also obviously don't like the fact that he literally can barely form a proper English sentence and falls asleep in front of world leaders, and obviously has some form of mental affliction, whether it's dementia or whatever. I'm not a doctor. There's obviously something going on, and to deny that would be just insane. So yeah, I guess I don't have much else to say.
Okay, next is Destiny.
Just the idea that anybody can criticize Biden for his speech patterns when Trump was literally like trying to fucking direct the country from his insane fucking Twitter account, and when Trump was just like this, like a lot of you guys on here are younger. In my day, we made fun of Bush for Bushisms, and Trump actually put him to shame. I don't know if
What aboutism?
I don't know. No, Bushisms.
Sorry.
I don't know if a single goddamn person in this country anymore remembers how goofy Bush talking was because of how fucking insane Trump was, whether it was on Twitter, whether it was the crazy judo-like handshakes he tried with other world leaders, whether it was the off-the-wall shit that got leaked from his personal recordings or leaked from the White House, the bullshit countries, the grab him by the, like everything. Holy shit. Yeah, I think that Biden is a much better leader. Yeah, he's a little boring, so boring that maybe he puts himself to sleep sometimes, but I will take the dementia-addled Biden, who seems to be a more capable and effective leader than Trump was. I think that says way more about Trump than it does about Biden. I think that what he's done with the coronavirus relief has been great. I think that the way he's handled the coronavirus so far, I think has been pretty great. And the way that we've handled our foreign affairs, I think we've gotten more respect around the world. I think that we can see that in how our NATO allies are being energized in the border of Ukraine, how it seems like Russia's not going to invade, how it seems like we brought people together to sanction and heavily condemn Russia for those actions. And I think that domestically, he's done a good job as well. well. We've managed to get through another horrible fucking fuck up that a Republican president has granted a Democratic one. We are hitting all-time highs in our economy again. We're bolstering the economy. Unemployment is 3.9%. God bless Joe Biden. I'm excited just talking about him. I'm getting fucking rock hard.
Wonderful. Now I'm gonna throw it over to Lecture Fan.
Yeah, you're so excited about Biden that when the first thing you say when you go to defend Biden is, but Trump did this and Trump that and Trump that. It's just the extreme TDS, and it's obviously true. Look, Biden is so unpopular. His poll numbers are so bad. It is such a joke. I mean, he's literally in the 30s now of approval ratings. Look at his poll numbers. They're horrible, and there's a good reason they're horrible. They're so bad. And troll all you want and say you love Biden and stuff. He's not even going to be the nominee in 2024. You've got all the Democrats, you know, who's going to run? Should we get Kamala? Should we get Buttigieg? Even Biden is now laying the groundwork to not run in 2024. He said he's going to run if he's still healthy. It's obvious he's laying the groundwork. Mark my words, before the 2024 election begins, he's going to say, I've got a health issue, I can't run, and it's going to be fake. You know, he does have health. He's got mental health issues. He's got cognitive difficulties. There's no question about that. Just watch a video of him today and watch a video of him 20 years ago. He's clearly got cognitive issues. You guys need to quit trolling, quit pretend. Just start talking about Kamala Harris and Pete Buttigieg, which, by the way, I so hope Kamala Harris runs. I so hope Kamala Harris is the nominee in 2024, because that will be one of the worst blowouts and landslide election victories for Republicans.
Nixon at the end, did you hear that? Lecture the fact that in the past 70 years, only Nixon has polled more